Hey, how you guys doing? Hi, how you doing? This is Rolo. And how I'm supposed to start all of my shows right now. Um, God bless. God bless Mr. Campbell. I love him dearly. Um, let me put that away. There we go. Well, welcome back. Welcome to the show. Today we're going to be talking about polyamory. I think I'm just going to jump right in here. No BS. It's actually very cold here in Reno today. Maybe I will just tell you a few little quick hit things. It is about 35 degrees right now outside, and I've moved to a different area of Reno over since August. Moved to a new secret location in the Nevada desert. I'm going to do the Art Bell thing and broadcast live like at 1 a.m. here. Like creepy, like tinfoil hat stuff, right? I should do like aliens and things like that. That'd be great. So anyways, okay. So what are we going to talk about today? Oh, first of all, I want to thank everybody who decided to call in with their stories for Friday's show. That was kind of like, I had planned it and then I kind of didn't plan it. And then I just wanted to a lot of people wanted to talk about their journey. Everybody wants to tell their story, right? When it comes to the red pill, everybody wants to tell their story, or they want to in some way be sort of like what I call a red pill evangelist. They want to tell their friends, or they want to help other guys. I mean, why wouldn't you, right? I mean, it's like the gospel, right? And I hate to sound like a cult leader here, but it's the gospel, right? They want to spread the good news or the good word, right? And a lot of times that can get you into trouble. But there's still that want, right? You still want to be able to say stuff like that. You still want to let other people know. And I'm glad you guys did call in. That was a really well-received show, like better than I even imagined. I was just thinking I would give you guys a chance because what we talked about on Wednesday with respect to the guy we were I don't want to say we were tearing him down, but this guy, I think his name is Josh, from Pinnacle of a Man. A lot of his critiques, I think, of the manosphere and red pill was erroneous, to say. That's the nicest way to put it. But I think that the want, or the idea that guys want to in some way better their lives, or they're seeking out, they're looking for answers, or looking for why did my girlfriend break up with me, or why can't I find a girl, why am I still a virgin at 28 years old, those kinds of questions. Guys, they don't look for the red pill, or I'm say guys actually have to look for the red pill because we don't advertise. We don't have big billboards. We don't have it's not mainstream. And quite honestly, I think when I get myself into the most trouble is when I think that it can be mainstream. I think just by the very nature of the manosphere and the very nature of the red pill is it kind of has to be something that you hear about. It's word of mouth. You could find it on the internet, of course, but I think that it's something that has to be kind of personally shared. It's like an interpersonal kind of communication that has to happen for guys to really to really receive it, and then to kind of at least set aside their preconceptions about it, and then sort of listen to what I have to say, what Rich has to say, what Ryan has to say, what anybody in the name the guy, right? Even Roosh, even Royce, whoever. I think there's still this idea that guys want to be able to say, this is what it has done for me. Like one of the most trafficked, one of the most commented on essays on my site is an essay called Confidence in the Safety Net. And in that, I was actually just kind of, honestly, I didn't mean it to sound like to come out like this, but I was really kind of looking for people to sort of give me their testimonies, or to let me know what the red pill or what my previous books had done, because I needed quotes for the back of book 3, so that people will know. I never put anything on the back of my books until book 3. And so that's, I put that out there to give people an opportunity so I could sort of use those things. But then that thing just snowballed and blew up into a really, it's over it's over 10 pages. So it's over 1,000 comments are on that one. So it's a really well trafficked essay, I guess, for myself. And in it, actually, I said, when you guys I'll become red pill. It gives you sort of a freedom. It gives you a sort of an opportunity to experiment, to do things that you weren't able to do before because you just simply didn't have the tools with which to do them. And so it's no longer, I have to just, you kind of lose your scarcity mentality, I think. And so that's the safety net part of it. The confidence part of it is really sort of like the confidence to experiment, the confidence to go out and to try things that you would not have been you wouldn't even thought of trying when you were in your blue pill conditioned state. So that's why I did that, and I'm glad you guys enjoyed that. So, gosh, I'm sorry for getting long-winded on that, but I felt like I kind of needed to do that after Wednesday's show because I didn't want anybody to think like I was directly coming down on this one guy because he was coming up with a lot of these arguments. Now, I don't even want to call them arguments because that's not what they were. They were just sort of assertions, like straw man assertions about what I've written, what I'm about, what I've been doing for almost 18 years. Actually, it will be 18 years very soon. What I've been doing with my work, what I've been doing with my books. I right now, I've been in this chair since about 5 o'clock this morning, working on book 4. I'm doing the formatting right now for it. I'm not ready to send it out for the second round of edits yet. So I'm still kind of developing things and putting things together. I think a lot of people think that when you write a book, and this is probably true of fiction, I don't know, but I think this is probably true of fiction, that a lot of people think when you write a book, you just write the book. And then you put it in a book format. You send it off to wherever, make it a Kindle book or make it an e-reader or whatever, make it a PDF, a portable document file. And then send it off to the and maybe that's a lot. I think a lot of sort of amateur writers do that. They'll just like put it into a Word file and then they'll say, okay, this is my book, right? But a book, I think, anyways, and this is me coming from a designer's background, and a lot of people don't. Maybe you do, maybe you don't know that I've been a designer, an art director, graphic designer, photographer. If it has to do with digital media, I've been involved in it to some extent since 1992, 93, somewhere around there. Actually, it's funny. The way I got into graphic design was the bands I was in. I used to have to do all the flyers for any show that we would do. And so I did such great flyers that I had like other bands that would come up to me and they would say, hey, will you do our flyer? And so I started charging them for it. And I would start making money off of just like making flyers because everybody needed flyers back then. And that sort of gave me a love for like typography and layout and all that other good stuff. And that's what got me into actually being a graphic designer at first, and then getting into, becoming an art director, a brand manager, and sort of, again, building from there. But a book to me is something, is a work of art. And if you look at my book as compared to a lot of other guys' books, the layout is like a book. It doesn't look like just an unformatted massive text. I mean, maybe that's just all you need when you are looking on a Kindle reader. But for me, like when I first did the very first book, I'm like, and yes, I realize that the text is tiny. I'm going to be doing a new edit of that. We're on 6 years now of The Rational Male. I published back in October 1st of 2013. And yes, I back then I thought that was going to be the only book I'd ever write. So anyways, just moving on a little bit. Am I Geddy Lee? No, I'm not Geddy Lee. I actually did play bass for a very long time in Hollywood in the late 80s and early 90s. So no, I have been growing the hair. Sorry. Yeah. Anybody else want to ask some stupid personal questions before I get started here? Today I'm going to talk about polyamory. I have written quite a bit about polyamory lately. I think this year is it sort of dawned on me that poly is the nice, cute way of talking about basically wanting to be non-exclusive. And I think a lot of people get me mixed up when I come down on poly, because a lot of people will say, well, aren't you the guy that talks about spinning plates? Yes, I have. In fact, I didn't coin the term spinning plates. That's actually a Tom Likas thing. I'm the one who just I wrote a 6-part series about it. It's in the first book. And I think that there needs to be, even back in the day, and I'm not just talking about like back when I was, single and my 20s or something like that. But I mean, back when I first started writing about this, I think I understood the importance of guys, particularly men, needing to be non-exclusive for a long time. If anybody else, I'm just gonna kind of clarify a few things here before I get started. Oh, by the way, today you can call in. Well, not call in. You can join me. I'm going to give you the link here in just a second. If you want to, please. Here's my. Let's make a deal here, okay? If you are going to join me, I'm going to take you guys on probably the last 30 or 40 minutes of the show. Maybe a little bit, if somebody has something really cool to say, that's fine. I don't mind, bouncing ideas off of you, but do try to stay topical. If you want to ask me how to get back with your girlfriend, or what's the best way to date a single mother, or whatever, any of that kind of stuff, if you really want me to answer those, give me a super chat, or I will save you till the end of the show, and then I will talk to you about that. Today's not going to be sort of a call-in show or a join-in show so much as it is I want to stay topical and I want to stay on top of this, because there's a lot in the news about this. There's a lot in the news about poly. And I'll tell you the thing that set all of this off, at least for today's show, and I talked about this a little bit last Friday with Pat Campbell on Pat Campbell's show, is the Katy Hill incident, I guess, or the Katy Hill. For those of you who don't know who Katy Hill is, she's a congresswoman from California. And she's just recently resigned because a lot of these pictures have come out that her I guess she was going through a divorce. Her ex-husband decided that he was going to make public a bunch of pictures of her naked with her girlfriends, and apparently they had kind of what we would call like a swingers relationship or something, where it was just sort of an open relationship. Or I think what's funny is when we think about swingers, we still have that kind of mid-70s idea of key parties and guys coming to, if you guys don't know what a key party is, go look it up on Google. You'll laugh. But this swinging 70s kind of thing, where it's like a lot of people also, I think when we think about pickup artists, we think of like sort of Leisure Suit Larry, or the pickup artists of the 70s, disco and kind of like the shark skin suit kind of guy, and easy to mock, easy to laugh at. Same thing kind of goes, I think, for poly, but there's this effort, I think, right now in Western societies to attempt anyways to get poly to be pushed into the mainstream. Now, people have fought me on this, and I'll name some names here in a little while, but people have fought me on the idea that poly is never going to be mainstream. I disagree, and I disagree strongly, because I see right now CBS just I'll show it here in just a moment. CBS just came out with I think about 20-minute documentary on customizable relationships, right? Or alternate relationship strategies, which is the nice, cute way of saying poly, which is the nice, cute way of saying, we're gonna pretend we're in a monogamous relationship, but we're also going to go out and bang other people because we're human beings and we're sexual beings and we need to go out and do things. Now, I'm not going to disagree with that. I think that you are absolutely. I think that's one of the reasons why we get ourselves into kind of like the troubles that we get into right now, is this confusion over what is monogamy, what is commitment, what is having a girlfriend, what is having a boyfriend going forward. Let's just, we're going forward into the 2020s. What is it to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a wife or a husband or whatever? What does a committed relationship look like? And I think that right now they're kind of what I call tilling the fields, right? They're going to plant the fields pretty soon, but they're tilling the fields right now so we can plant them. And I mean this in the terms of like what is being embedded into our popular consciousness. Prior to gay marriage, we had to in some way find out. Remember, gay marriage is not gay marriage; it's same-sex marriage, and there's actually a difference in that. So, but we had to sort of till the fields, and it took a while. We had to find ways to normalize it. We had to put homosexuals in sitcoms. We had to make openly gay characters part of recognizable, successful movie franchises. We had to in some way insinuate, we had to say, drop little hints like this character here had two fathers, right? And then we move on with the story and stuff, and we just, oh, okay, yeah, two fathers, okay, big deal. It used to be that was a big deal to have like, I don't know if anybody remembers a TV show like Will and Grace. Like in Will and Grace, there's openly homosexual characters. It was sort of this build up to where we are right now. We've gotten quote unquote same sex marriage, and now we're moving on, and we're like, okay, no big biggie. Who cares? The state doesn't care who you marry. They don't care. It's a contract to them. I think it's going to be interesting to see in the future, again in 2020, going into the 2020s. Just how divorce is going to shape up between homosexuals. That'll be interesting to me. But anyways, I think right now we're seeing a similar effort in popular culture. I have a post, and it's in the description here. If you guys want to go and check out the essay, I wrote it about maybe 2 months ago, 3 months ago. It's called what is it? Paternity, promiscuity, and poly. And one of the reasons why I started reading this book, Promiscuity by Tim Burkhead, was because I kept seeing this pop up. I have a collage as the opening picture of that essay. And in that essay, I basically delve into all of this stuff, but that opening picture is sort of a collage of all of these screen captures that I have picked up over like the course of the last year, maybe a little bit, maybe before that. I think maybe the late 2018, I also picked up some, but really since I would say the Q3, Q4 of 2018 to where we are right now has been a push to in some way normalize polyamory. That's really what we have to define our terms here too, between like what is polyamory, what is polygamy, what is polygamy, and what is polyandry. So I'll talk about those in a little bit here, but the thing I'm seeing anyways is I'm seeing a lot of articles, at least that are coming to my notice, about how women are cheating more. What was it like? If you have been following my Twitter feed, I just retweeted an article about how it is like 60% of men have admitted to an affair, to an extramarital affair, and now 45% of women have. And that's admission. Okay, that's not like did we or didn't we. That's the people who felt comfortable in filling out that part of the questionnaire, right? What do you got here? Let's see. One man's army. What do you say? It seems it would be difficult to hold frame in poly with a lack of boundaries and chaos. Yeah, we're going to talk about that, man. I want to sort of give you some background here before we get into sort of the particulars of this. Oh, and by the way, if you guys, I put it in the chat there. I'll put it one more time in the chat really quickly. This right there, I just put it in the chat, is the StreamYard link, so you can get to Josh and you can get on the show later on here. And I will put, there it is right there. If you want to copy and, I don't know if you can copy and paste that, but anyways, you can write that down, or you can put it in your URL and go talk to Josh real quick. So anyways, that's the banner right there. Let me pull that off real quick. Okay, and come back. All right. So I'm seeing a lot. Thanks, Chris, for that $20, brother. That helps a lot. See, I'll even put your name on. Again, I'm seeing a lot of, it's not just about poly, it's again tilling the fields. It's this idea that a woman having an affair will save her marriage, right? And it's usually women that are writing these things now. And so I see articles about how healthy it is to have an affair, or how healthy it would be, like, once she gets it out of her system, then she can come back to you and love you that much more. And that's the gist of a lot of these articles. When it comes to infidelity, it's almost like there's an excusing of women being infidelity, resorting to infidelity, and why they do so. And now we have to find ways. The other one, that article I was just referring to, it was going into the reasons why women are cheating on their husbands. And 9 times out of 10, it's because it's everything that I talk about when it comes to the red pill. What the red pill's been going into for a very long time now is that that women want to make up for missing out, and a lot of times. So right now, I think you're seeing women in their 30s, maybe in their 40s, because the what was it? The other stat that I was going to throw out there is that women between the ages of 40 and 45 that is the most common stretch, like age range for women to have an extramarital affair. So when a woman gets to be about 40, 45 years old, that's when women report at least having the idea of like wanting to do so. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. I think that what women of this like decade or this generation here are seeing is that they've gotten into a marriage just as I've arranged or I've talked about in preventive medicine. When I show you the timeline there, women tend to get married right around between 26 and 28 years old. And then I've also said that the epiphany phase, when women decide that they cannot compete with their sisters or they can't compete with their younger self in the sexual marketplace, that's when they start looking for Mr. Good Enough, the guy who Sheryl Sandberg says is the equal partner. And so what happens is they get into these relationships, and maybe they have their party years again, like Sheryl Sandberg says, date the bad boys, have fun in your party years, but don't marry those bad boys. Find a guy who's an equal partner, who wants to, who respects you as a woman and your opinions and everything. Basically wants you to be opinionated, and raise kids with that guy, and in time nothing's going to be sexier. Well, that's the part she got wrong, because what happens is when women get to be about 38, 39, 40 years old, somewhere around there, that's when they realize that they've got to spend the rest of their lives with this guy. And from the time they're, let's say, their epiphany phase, let's just say 30, round number here, around 30, those women we'll see that that's a good time to settle down, have a family, whatever. But it takes them that 10 years, like say from 30 to 40, to realize that they're missing something. This is when the alpha widows come out. And by alpha widow, I mean she's pining for the guys that were exciting and they were fun in her college days. And, I laugh, I joke about this, but the guy who was the hot guy in the foam cannon party in Cancun on spring break, that's the guy she pines after. If you've ever seen the movie Pixar's Inside Out, the woman is always the mother in the relationship, in the character, she's always thinking about the Brazilian helicopter pilot. That's the thing. Like the women are thinking about the Brazilian helicopter pilot, and boy, we should have just stuck with him. It would have been much more fun to take with that. Well, here's the thing: is when that happens, and when a woman is going from like 30 to 40, and she's involved in this digital culture, she's involved in the social media, she's thinking, hey, I could get better. Remember, when we talk about hypergamy, we're talking about doubt. Is this guy the best that I can do? Is he, can I do better than him? Whether that's the guy being more alpha, being more fun, being, making more money, whatever better is, and she thinks she can get, that's the doubt that's nagging her. And now I want you guys to think about this, about how that affects a woman between the ages of, say, 30 and 40 years old as her sexual market value decays. And so when she's thinking about those things, that's when you get what I call the making up for missing out dynamic. Some women actually never really, because some women get married early on, right? Maybe they got pregnant when they were like 20, 21 years old, somewhere around there. And their girlfriends are out there enjoying their party years while they are taking care of a baby or two. And so once they get to about 35 years old, and those children that they had when they were 20, 22 years old are much more self-sufficient, and maybe they're, entering their tweens or something, that's when the making up for missing out dynamic kind of kicks in. And our girlfriends say, you could do so much better than this guy. You can do this. You can. And that's where we get the eat, pray, love dynamic. It's the idea. It's what we call divorce porn in the manosphere. It's this narrative that pop culture sells to women that says, divorce your husband, you can live a better life if you just do it. And you better do it soon, because by the time you get to 40, you're going to be sexually invisible. another thing that's, written about quite a bit. And so that tends to by an order of degrees, that wears down on a woman between 30 and say 40 years old. Again, this is in Western society, but you can also modify this for non-Western societies as well. Whether a woman has the capacity or the options or the opportunities, whatever, to actually pursue that is a topic for another show. But the want, the desire for that, the sexual consciousness of a woman is thinking about those things. Could I do better than this guy? And for a lot of women in Western societies, the incentive is always there. Yes, you can, or you should. Here's a movie about it. Here's a book about it. Here's a song about it. You can do better, girl. Dump him and go and find a better guy, right? Now, whether that's true or not is not the point I'm making here. You can debate whether that works out for them for the better or not. I don't think it does, but the impetus, the incentive is there. There's very little consequences for a woman to break up with a guy, to divorce a guy. The odds are in her favor. Women will debate me on this. They will say, well, women's quality of life goes down. Yeah, but it's better than if they had been single. It's their quality of life is still going to be better after divorce than if they'd been a spinster, right? As if they had, got to 35 or 36 and never married and never had kids. So again, order of degrees. But what I'm talking about is the want or the desire to what was it? I forget the chick's name. She wrote this book. There was an experiment. I don't really call it experiment, but and I forget the woman's name, but there's what was called the Wild Oats Project, and it was this book and I think like a blog kind of documentary of this woman who was in exactly this kind of position. Go look up the Wild Oats Project. Somebody go grab me her name. It's escaping me right now. I wrote actually Making Up for Missing Out. This is another essay that I've written. It was based on her experiences and how she wanted to. Her husband said, "Fine, if you want to go out and you want to nail other guys, get it out of your system." She was childless. She didn't have, she'd been married. She married, I think, probably in her late 20s, and was really experiencing the making up for missing out. Dynamic, I guess, in her head. And so she decided to pursue it. And the husband gave her the permission, I guess, to go out and become poly, right? And what do you suppose happened? Right? Yes, she ended up getting divorced and splitting up with the guy. And the guy, predictably got jealous and decided that, he didn't want to be with a woman who didn't want to be with him. So hey, okay, that's the way things work. Yeah, Robin Rinaldi. Thank you, John. Yeah, that was who it was. So anyways, she wrote a book about it. It was called The Wild Oats Project. And I think she's still kind of sort of regretting those things. But the regret is not what I want to talk about. It's that area between, like, say, 30 and 40 where the woman is not quite out of the sexual marketplace. But I mean, unless she's married and she sort of removed herself from it, but she's still in it. And that's what I don't think a lot of guys really understand when we start talking about how women want to still advertise themselves. I just saw an Instagram. It was pretty funny. I saw this Instagram of this guy who was taking a video of this other guy who was taking a video of his girlfriend. We talk about this occasionally, like myself and Rich Cooper and Aubrey from I forget Aubrey's thing, but Aubrey and myself. And we always say, if you treat her like a celebrity, she'll treat you like a fan. And it was perfect analogy in this. Like, she was picking up these fall leaves and throwing them up, and he just wasn't getting the picture right, or he wasn't getting the video right, and he wasn't doing it right. And she's there just kind of like, mugging for the camera and trying to vogue and all this kind of crap. And what she was doing. She wanted to, whether that guy was actually in a relationship with her or not is sort of, irrelevant. She is looking to advertise herself. Now, I'm not saying I don't know that they're married or anything like that, but now think about how Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook and all the social media that women are very much wrapped up in. Think about how, even if you are married, even if you are in a long-term relationship, how that affects that woman. She still has this constant access to the global sexual marketplace through social media. So what happens is again, when that woman goes through that period of time where she's wants to make up for missing out, or she's got the divorce porn, narrative in the back of her head, triggering that hypergamous doubt, is he the best that I can do? Think about what that does to a woman who is in a long-term monogamous relationship. So why wouldn't it be a great idea to say, you know what, let's open our marriage, let's have an open relationship? And that's what we used to call it. I remember hearing about open, quote unquote, open relationships back in the late 80s and early 90s, right? People wanted to find some way to normalize the idea that you could still have a mate, you could still be paired with somebody, and then you could still go out and enjoy having sex with other people. Well, I'll explain to you today why that's sort of, I understand the want for it. I understand the desire for it. But I think in particularly in terms of the sexual marketplace and the global sexual marketplace today, I think it's kind of impractical. A lot of guys will say, well, you can't keep track of all the girls. Or from a guy's point of view, we have to look at how poly plays out for both sides of the playing field here, right? Like how does this affect women and how does this affect men? Because the first thing out of guys' mouths whenever I mention poly is they think it's great. And why wouldn't they think it's great, man? Why wouldn't they think that, hey, I can have a good wife at home, and she's going to make me grilled cheese sandwiches, and I'm going to, we're going to have a dog and a kid in the yard, and I'm going to be able to go nail other chicks on the side. And that sounds cool. But the thing is you don't actually have the same capacity. I mean, by and large, unless you are a guy like, Andrew Tate, unless you are a guy who is like this apex alpha who has like 100% solid frame control, and I mean, almost to the point of being domineering, unless that's you're probably not going to be able to maximize polyamory to the same degree that an average woman is going to be able to do it. Because women are the selectors, men are the performers. So who has an easier time in a polyamorous social order, and a polyamorous, I guess, sociosexual order? Who has the easier time? Who can make the most of it? Who can leverage that the most? What Rich here says, poly women are a product of toxic feminism. It makes women into terrible versions of men. Yeah, I can see that, Rich. I understand. Again, it's, what have we been doing for the last, since the sexual revolution? What have we been doing since the early 70s is masculinizing women and feminizing men. So I think that when we look at poly, when we look at non-exclusivity, my problem isn't that, men and women go out and play the field. There's another 80s term for you. Oh, we're going to go out and play the field. I don't want to be locked down, or I'm not ready for, have you heard this before? A woman says, I'm not ready for a relationship yet. Yeah, with you, I'm not ready for a relationship yet. So I was going to say is that, back in the day, back when we were talking about open relationships, like what makes it different? Well, why is it any different now than it was before? The thing is that we want that, because we think that we can have the best of both worlds. We think that we can have all of the benefits of monogamy with all the benefits of polygamy or polyamory. We can have all the benefits of having sex with who we want to on a Saturday night, or we can have a girlfriend. And it's like, I get it. I understand. Here's the thing. I also got to throw this out there is I think that a lot of people, when I dig into this more today, I think a lot of people are going to say, well, this is you being a trad con, right? Or this is you being a conservative. And I think that this is me being objective about this whole damn thing. Okay. Because I'm the one who's saying, spin more plates, right? Go out there and see what's available. Go out and be, don't become monogamous as a man. Don't become monogamous until you're 30 years old. Why do I say that? Well, because I believe that men need to be more focused on themselves as their mental point of origin. They need to be more focused on their passions, more focused on building themselves up into, again, the best versions that they can be. I think that men need two things during their 20s, and that is they need flexibility. They need They need to be not be locked down. Okay. And the reason I say that is because you need time and you need the ability to maneuver. Those are the two most important things during your 20s. And if you are locked into a monogamous relationship, whether that's by, knocking up your girlfriend or you being a serial monogamist, I think a lot of guys, when they enter into their 20s, they sort of waste that decade of their lives because they're still blue pill and they still believe that monogamy is the only way that they can go. I could never be with more than one girl. They think that that's like monogamy is a selling point for them. They think that that's what makes them unique. Maybe it does right now, but that's what makes them unique in the sexual marketplace. Is I'm dedicated to one woman. If I find one woman, I just stick with her and I put all my energy into her. And they don't realize that really. I mean, from a evolutionary perspective, they don't have any other choice, right? Whether they've been conditioned to believe that or they actually are not of a high enough level of sexual market value to pursue their innate sexual drives, which is unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. Whether or not that's true, that makes no difference. They see that as their means to solving the reproductive problem. And really, that when we talk about polyamory, that's where we got to start, is sexual strategies and how do we solve, as human beings who want to be polyamorous, I guess, how do we solve that reproductive problem? Now, I'm going to read a little bit of this new article from Jeff Miller. And Dr. Jeff Miller, give him his title. I actually do like Jeff Miller. I know he does not like me. He does not like anybody in the red pill. He does not like anybody in the manosphere. He's just wrote an article on Quillette, and it is trying to make a case for why we should normalize in the future, going into 2020, why we should normalize polyamory. And if you know anything about him, he and his, I guess, wife, Dr. Diana Fleischman, are both evolutionary psychologists. I think Diana might be behavioral psychologist. That's kind of actually, I think I found her before I found him, but they are very much advocates of this poly lifestyle and, non-exclusivity, but also exclusivity. Yes. Yeah. Rich, he is poly, and so is Diana Fleischman. And another reason why I'm bringing this up, or why I'm saying it's becoming more normalized, is because they also did a couple of interviews about polyamory. In fact, that's their whole shtick right now, is focusing primarily on poly and trying to raise awareness to poly. And I think more Jeff than Diana, but they're trying to in some way make it more normalized. So there's a couple of things before I'm going to read this. I want you to sort of frame my side of the story here first. Is when I look at this from an evolutionary psychologist's perspective. I'm not an evolutionary psychologist. Okay, I don't have a doctorate. Okay, my background is in behavioral psychology, but I have a very strong interest in evolutionary psychology, as you might guess. And I really think that ought to be, the primary understanding, or the primary driver, I think, for a lot of the manosphere, a lot of red pill thought. These guys think that I'm some sort of armchair, evolutionary evo psych guy. Okay. I do my homework. Let's just put it that way. And so in doing my homework, I've read Tim Burkhead's Promiscuity. I've read David Buss. I've read Marty Hazelton. I've read Gangstead. I've read, Matt Ridley. I've read a lot of stuff. Okay. I'm going here because I don't think a lot of evo psych guys either can or won't go and connect the dots that I connect, that a lot of my work is based on. So having said that, we have to look at the differences between men and women's sexual strategy. Men, again, like I said, tend to pursue, left to our own devices. If we could have it our way, if we could go out and not have any worries about getting laid, about finding a girlfriend, about reproduction, if we didn't have to worry about it, if there was no obstacle to us reproducing, men would always look for unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. Now, if that bothers you, if that rubs you the wrong way, All you have to do is go and look at any online porn site. Look at any Pornhub. Pornhub's good because they have like statistics. They've got actually a blog about statistics with respect to online pornography. Why is online pornography ubiquitous, free, streaming? You know, I've said this before. A 12-year-old boy has access to sexual material that even some of the greatest emperors of the past with, you know, huge harems or whatever, like they have access to a degree of sexuality that has never in our lifetime been achievable. And when I have got it, and all I have to do is just call it up right here on this little box, right? And so when I say that the male imperative, like when I talk about the feminine imperative, let's talk about the masculine imperative. Masculine imperative is unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. When we are put into a position of monogamy, wouldn't it seem like a great idea to be able to be monogamous and still have like 3 other wives that you could go nail? If one of them wasn't into it, you go down and see Betty instead of Jenny, right? And then you go and have your fun, right? That's I think a lot of people think of polygamy, and by polygamy I mean one man and many women. They think of that in terms of, like, say, the Mormons, or maybe even the ancient, or maybe, you know, like in the days of Abraham, like Old Testament times. You know, that was the norm, was one guy and many women. In Muslim cultures right now, believe the maximum that a Muslim man can have is 4 wives. And still to this day, that's what they practice, or that's what they would like to practice. I don't know, depending on who it is and what culture they're in, maybe that's more achievable than not. But there's still that desire, because we want, as men, we want to be able to reproduce many, many times. We want to have multiple offspring. We want to pass our genetics on to multiple offspring. Was it 1 in 200 guys on planet Earth is in some way directly genetically related to Genghis Khan? Go look that one up. One man for every 17 women reproduced as far back as, like, I think it was 8,000 years ago. And that's post-agrarianism. So it's not just this, well, we're moving out of tribes into an agrarian lifestyle. I'm not saying there's nothing to that. There is, but even the DNA record shows that even in conditions of monogamy, men and women find ways around it, right? I've heard it argued that guys today, because of divorce, like, we want to think that I think it's interesting in popular culture, we want to think that divorce in some way works for men. Like, well, you divorced her, but now you can go nail 3 other girls. Oh, great. And now you got 3 more wives, and they want to call that like a soft harem or soft polygamy. Well, you can have multiple wives, but you can only have 1 at a time, right? Like, as if that's in some way a boon to a guy, and it's, you know, they don't understand the logistics of the divorce industry. So men's primary goal in life is to breed with many women. How that works out, not every guy can breed with, not every one guy can breed with 17 women. Not every guy is going to be Genghis Khan. Okay, there are alpha males and there are beta males, and I'm using those terms unironically, in the abstract here. Okay, so by alpha I mean a high value, high SMV man. By beta I mean a low SMV man. And we see this played out statistically here in the digital age, and we have the ability now to determine what it is that women are looking for in a guy, because we analyze not what they say, but what they are doing. So when we look at stats from Tinder, when we look at stats from OkCupid, when we look at stats from, like, there are great stats in this book called The Billion Wicked Thoughts. Great stats in Dataclysm. That's another good one. And I think that probably into the future, in the next decade, we will have access to even more statistics that show what women's behavior is and not what their declared wants are. So when we look at, like, say, Tinder, we can see that about 15% of guys, I'm being generous, maybe 20% of guys are what 100% of women fixate on. Like, when it comes to sex, when it comes to, I want to get with that guy, 80% of guys are betas, 20% of guys are alphas. And that's where the Pareto principle comes from. It's not that those 20%, like a lot of people think, oh, well, those 20% of guys are nailing 80% of women. No. Because those 20% of guys are still being conditioned for monogamy. They're still being brought up as little boys to say, you know what, Johnny, I know you're an alpha male and you're a natural looker and you're going to have a lot of girlfriends in the future, but you shouldn't do that. You should only stick with one woman. When you teach that boy that, what's he going to do? At the very least, maybe he's going to go out and do it anyways, and go and get with as many women as he can, start his own harem. But he's going to think, at some point, I could never be with more than one more. Even and I know that this is lip service, but even Dan Blitzerian is talking about like settling down and starting a family and finding one good girl, and he's doing interviews and shit. And then 2 weeks later, he's showing pictures of him at his Halloween party, and he's with like 9s and 9.8s. I mean, really sexy ass women. And people will say, well, he's paying for those girls. Okay, fine. But he's still in a picture with them, and he's still, he's not living this, life of domestic bliss, right? In monogamy. So that when we look at polyamory, we have to see, how does it serve men and how does it serve women? So when I say, guys, you need to be non-exclusive in your 20s, I don't mean have a girlfriend and then 10 girls on the side. I mean, just have the 10 girls on the side. Just have 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever plates in rotation throughout your 20s while you are focusing on you. You're not focusing on the girls, you're focusing on yourself. And as a byproduct of you focusing on yourself, you also draw women into your world, into your frame, right? So when you get to be 30 years old, 30, maybe into your early 30s, 32, then you might want to say, okay, well, I want to stick with this one. I want to try some sort of monogamy with this girl. That's why I say that, because not because I think every guy should just go out and bang hot girls willy-nilly. It's because it frees you up. It frees you up for those two things, right? Maneuverability and time and maneuverability. And if you're not thinking about one girl all the time, if you're not one of the 80%ers who has to be a serial monogamist and has to put all of his eggs, his evolutionary eggs in one girl, then you are better able to follow your ambitions, become the guy that you want to, be able to actually decide who you want to be, and then pursue who you want to be. And women understand that when a guy gets to be about, early 30s, that's when he has matured, and that's when he's a better judge of character. That's when he's got more going for him. That's when he's got a job. Maybe he's made partner in the law firm, or he's now a doctor, or whatever it is. And I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying whatever your passions are, you are going to be in a better position, in a more mature position, hopefully, if you've lived up to the best of your potential when you get into your early to mid 30s, right? So that's why I talk about spinning plates and non-exclusivity. What I also, if you go and you look at any of those posts that I made about plate theory, when I talk about non-exclusivity, I also say be above board, in as best a way that you can. I'm not saying you sit down at the table and say, look, I'm going to go and nail other chicks. You need to in some way live a life or imply through your actions that woman understands that you have other girlfriends or you have other opportunities, because that's what keeps her on. That's what makes her interested in you. Women want guys who other men want to be and other women want to bang. And so when you do that, when women give you that third-party pre-selection and they're showing you all of that, that's what makes you even that much more attractive. So plate spinning is a whole lot more than just, oh, I'm going to go get laid. I'm just bang anything that moves, right? Well, no, but you also have to understand that your primary sexual imperative is unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. Now, again, don't go out there. I'm not saying go and get an STD. I'm not saying any of that kind of stuff. I'm going to understand that about yourself and act accordingly, and act in your own best interests with that knowledge, with that foreknowledge. So in a way, poly kind of plays up to that, doesn't it? Poly, if we say, okay, wouldn't it be great if I could have 4 girlfriends, or was it sister wives, man? Wouldn't it be great if I could have, and I'm not coming down on Mormons here, but here's what's funny is I think that a lot of guys, especially guys like Jeff Miller and Jack Murphy, think that by me being critical of this, that I'm in some way conservative. No. Mormons have been doing polygamy pretty well for a while. Okay. Muslims have been doing polygamy pretty well for a while. So it's not a liberal versus conservative thing. or traditional or morality or any of this other kind of stuff. When we tie morality into our wedding and our marriage traditions or our life, our monogamous traditions, yeah, that happens, sure, but in this instance, it's not a liberal degenerate thing versus a conservative thing. I know it can get that way, and I know people will make that argument because of people who can't divest themselves from their ideologies. So you're going to get like the guys who are just dedicated, the libertines, right? The guys that you're going to go see at Burning Man on one side, and then you're going to have like the tradcons on the other, was saying, no, it's only one man, one woman, and you're only supposed to do this, and this is what the Lord said. So you got that kind of like a spectrum between either side. I would like to think that I'm somewhere in the middle of that. So when I'm critical of this, understand it's in the interest of being objective. It's in the interest of being analytical. So men need we need variety. Because we need to spread the seed. Our bodies are built in that way. What about women? Well, for women, particularly women who are in the downswing of their sexual market value, when they are on the downside of the graph, that my infamous SMV graph, as women get up to say the peak there, I don't think that they're quite as concerned about polygamy or polyamory or whatever as they would be when they get to be a bit older, because they still haven't. I think that what polyamory does to the female mind is to give them this idea that they can still go out and look for the best. So it's this, okay, I'm going to hang on to this guy because he's the best I can get right now, but I want to have the option to go out and to get with other guys because there might be a better guy out there, and I'll never know if I'm like stuck with this guy. So that's why I kind of laugh about this whenever I see these articles about polyamory. It's usually like 3 or 4 kind of desperate people, right? Maybe there's like 2 guys living with one girl, and the girl looks every bit of the feminists, overweight butch kind of look, but she's got these 2 guys who are just dote on her, and they're basically orbiters who became just maybe 1 degree more than an orbiter. And so they live together, and maybe they share her on the weekdays, but the girl is going out and looking for strange on a Friday night. She's looking for she can go outside the marriage to, we're going to hear people say, well, they want to satisfy their sexual natures. Oh, yeah, but why does a person go out to try to do that in the first place? Because for women, on women's side, because it's hypergamy, right? They're looking for the best genetic material they can get, and they're looking for the best provider. They're looking for alpha, seed, and beta need. I'm trying not to cuss in this in this episode. So they're looking for the guy who satisfies both sides of the hypergamous equation. And why they go do that is because women's sexual strategy is based on quality. They're looking for the guy who is, well, trying to find the guy who's the best amalgamation of those 2 things. Now, in today's society, women don't even look for those guys anymore. There's one guy that's for one thing. One guy is good for breeding, and there's one guy that's good for provisioning. And when women see those guys, there's a subconscious process that takes place in an instant understanding. Whether my euphemism for this is that women see men either as a draft animal or as a breeding stock. And sometimes that can be interchangeable, but generally women see men as breeding stock or a draft animal. And by draft animal, I mean a provider, a dad, parentally invested, a guy who's going to have utility versus the guy who's going to be fun in the sack and provide her with sexy sons. I don't know if you guys go look up sexy sons, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So we have to look at the strategy, the innate sexual strategies of men and women, and how polyamory kind of plays to both of those. My biggest problem with polyamory, at least from an evolutionary perspective, is that it tries to play both sides of the fence. So it's saying, well, I'm going to have one girl at home and she's going to be my main, and I'm going to go out and nail other chicks as opportunity presents itself. And women, on the other hand, say, well, I'm going to stick with this guy, and I'm going to go out and nail strange on the weekends and see if I can find better, because, I'm not getting any younger, and I still want the opportunity to go out and have fun with my girlfriends. And then that's how I'll solve my reproductive problem. And I think that it kind of upsets the evolutionary balance. And I'll tell you why. Because for men's existential fear is to take care of a child that is not theirs. That is the paternity like dichotomy or whatever paradox we want to call it. That is the fear that men will breed with a woman and invest themselves as a parental, like as a dad, as a parental provider, provisioning male, to put all of their efforts into one woman and those children. And the only thing he asks for in exchange is that the damn kid is his. That, and this is you want more information on this. I know it's, for some people it might be a little difficult read, but Promiscuity by Tim Burkhead. He goes into when sperm competition, when it comes into all of the things that have happened over the course of 100,000 years of our evolution, why it is men do what we do, why do we get jealous. And this is part of Jeff Miller's piece right here, where he's talking about jealousy. And what I want to talk about is like how jealousy is actually an evolutionary advantage. It's an evolutionary adaptation, an evolutionary advantage for men. And people will say, well, jealousy is bad or envy is bad. No, actually, they might seem bad. They might see, from an ethical, from a humanist perspective, we might say, oh, people shouldn't be jealous, right? You're a lesser man if you're jealous of what that guy. Well, the thing is, you are that way, and you evolved, and you were over the course of however many millennia to feel jealousy, to feel or mate guarding. Mate guarding is another thing. Is why do we feel like we need to protect our mate? Why do we want to why do we what was it like in body language, why do guys drape their arms over their girlfriends? Or like Anthony Bourdain did that with Asia Argento. He's like, he's basically got her in a headlock, but just a loose headlock, why is it that that's a natural default for guys? Well, it's because they want to ensure paternity. They want everyone around. It's a signaling that says, this woman is my bitch, right? This is my woman. And that is to say, like, for most men, powerful men, alpha men, would very much like to have a group of, like a harem of women, to be the women that he breeds with and bring, cycle one in, cycle one out, whatever. Powerful men have done this for, millennia, right? We sequester our women, our concubines, away in a tent, and we put eunuchs there, or we put them in the forbidden city, or we put them in the stockade, or we try to secure them somewhere so that we can ensure that our sperm is the one that's meeting her egg, and that they're going to breed with us, and that they're going to have children. Now, whether or not he's going to be invested in that kid later on, that's neither here nor there. I mean, yeah, it would be better if the guy was parentally invested, but that's not how it works. It's babies. Have the babies. Get the babies. For women, it's the same thing, but get the babies with the best quality guy. Get the babies with the best quality guy and ensure survival. And how does that, my question is, how does that relate to what we feel and what we're instinctually prompted to later on, like as part of where we're at right now? So here we are in 2019. We're still dealing with a jealousy, mate guarding, the hypergamous doubt, I would call that kind of stuff, is still influential on us today, and we're trying to sort of, I think, decide what we want to do with all of this. And so I wanted to throw this out here really quick, because I'm gonna read just a couple of things here from I'm just gonna throw this on the screen here real quick, if you guys will bear with me for 1 second. Fortunately, I don't need to worry about the there we go, much better. All right, this is the Quillette article from Jeff Miller. And again, I'm not beating up on Jeff here. Please don't think I'm beating up, but this is the best I can do. He's talking about, he goes through a lot of stuff. He says, so what is polyamory? How does it work? Polyamorous or open relationships are usually based on consensual monogamy, right? This is where I have the problem with what is popularly known as poly. So it's like, it's this want to have this old social contract, this want from a male perspective to still ensure your paternity, but yet still be able to have access to strange, right? And to hopefully, and I'm not saying that guys want to, settle down, have babies with every single one. It's not. It's what I'm talking about is the impetus. It is the instinctual drive to go out there and have sex, because what is the latent purpose of having sex or being driven to have sex? It is to solve a reproductive problem. Well, what comes as a result of that? So here we go. I'm just going to read a little bit more here. It says the idea that a relationship can be loving, committed, and serious without being sexually exclusive, right? It's a more libertarian approach to sexuality in which people can negotiate custom relationships. And you're going to see this going forward into the 2020s. It's going to be alternative relationship strategies or custom relationships, like contracts between firms or treaties between countries. Let that sink in for a minute, while still retaining some sexual sovereignty and freedom of mate choice. So, but what is the mate choice? Like, at what point do you go, okay, I'm going to stay with this one, or I'm not going to stay with this one? It's not so much I think really from this perspective, at least from women's perspective, it's saying you can have your cake and eat it too. You can still have this chump right here who's going to be a good provider and stick with you. And really, he's so out of sexual options that he'll put up with you being out in the field, for you going and being non-exclusive. So there's this cuckoldry element that goes along with poly, and I think a lot of guys who subscribe to poly or who have invested themselves into the idea of being polyamorous, this is the part that kind of rubs them the wrong way, because again, for men, the jealousy comes from the suspicion of not knowing paternity, of having that woman go out there and breed with another guy. Why do we get jealous? I get guys tell me this all the time. Like, guys will say, they'll say, Rolo, why is it that I broke up with my girlfriend and yet I still have these nightmares or these dreams of her knocking it out with another guy? I can't get over it. I can't. And they literally, that's really tough for guys, because there is the evolved need, the evolved instinct is to ensure paternity, make sure she's having your babies. And when the monogamous relationship splits and she's with another guy, these guys will tell me this. They'll say, I can't even stand the thought of her being with that guy or with another guy. That's what that people say that, well, that's jealousy. Yeah, but it's jealousy that had a function. Now, we can say, well, we're in 2019 now. Though those old adaptations, those old jealousy, are vestiges. They're vestigial, right? They're things that we don't need anymore, and they're actually a hindrance. Like when we talk about guys who are into like paleo, or they're into what is it? The carnivore diet, that kind of where all they're eating is meat. This is how we used to eat when we were cavemen. Okay, good. But the thing is, when we look at why does that work? Why does eating that kind of food do one thing to you and not another? Why do teeny tiny little infants prefer sweet foods? Well, because those foods are high in calorie and they have more potential energy. There's a lot of, you could say, so I don't want to dig too deep in that, but there's things that we are still subject to. One of the reasons why we're like, was it 68%, almost 70% of the American population is overweight and obese. We always say, well, you guys don't have, those guys don't have any willpower, or there's something personally wrong with them. Yeah, you could make that argument, but it's also because we evolved to process foods differently, and we have access to those foods. We have access to high carbohydrate foods right now. We have access to a volume and frequency of food that we didn't have in our evolutionary past. So while it was very efficient for us to like sweet foods in the past, or to eat certain things because they gave us a survival advantage, those advantages are now disadvantages. So using that as sort of the dynamic here, you could also say, well, now jealousy was useful in the past, but now it's not useful here, right? Or now it's a bad thing. And I would argue with that. I would say, no, it's there for a reason. It's there to ensure paternity. So when guys talk about any guy who would allow and I've said this before, any guy who would allow his woman to go out and have sex with another guy, that guy is signing up for his own cuckoldry. But, whatever you want to call it. Well, they say, well, he knows about it, so it's not cuckoldry. No, that's just semantics. That's just by order of degree. What is actual cuckoldry? It is I should say it's ensuring the survival of another man's offspring, of a male who's not your genetic, you're not sending your genetic material into the future. And in doing so, in ensuring the survival of another man's child, you are also locking yourself out, or at least diminishing your capacity to reproduce yourself or to ensure the survival of your own offspring, because you're diverting your resources and your energies and your effort into taking care of that other man's. That is cuckoldry right there, taking care of another man's genetic progeny. Right now, women will, I read this all the time. Guys will say, well, or women will say, well, the actual instance of real, paternity fraud, real cuckoldry is very, very low. Right. Only. So I've heard numbers thrown around saying anywhere between like 6% and like 20%. Well, I think 20% is really kind of huge, but somewhere in there. And they say, well, that's still low. A woman actually going out, nailing another guy, having his kid, and telling the husband or the monogamous boyfriend that it is actually his child. That's very, very low. That's what we want to call cuckoldry. That's what we want to define as cuckoldry. And I would argue that is not the case. Cuckoldry is ensuring the survival and taking care of another man's kid while he goes off and can reproduce with other women. Right? That's what primates do. That's what beta male primates do. That's how they get sexual access to the alpha male's females, like his harem. Right? I'm not saying we're monkeys or we're but we're descended from primates. We have a common ancestor somewhere along the way. But they, primates are the best. Whatever you want to. If you want to get into creationism and evolution, that's another show. But there are a lot of similarities here. So when you look at the alpha male primate and you see his females who are his harem, he can even say, hey, look, you can have access to them as long as they're not in estrus, as long as they're not going to have babies. But when they're in estrus, that's when he goes and kicks their asses and pushes them to the side and has sex with his harem so that his kids go on to the next generation. But what happens here is that when women are not in estrus, when they are happy to give sexual access to a beta male, it's always because it's a transaction. It's always because he's picking nits off of her, he brings her a banana, or he's got some sort of use. And one of those utilities is taking care of the progeny of the alpha male. Maybe he has a baby of his own in there somewhere, and that's kind of the payoff, is like, I'm going to have sexual access to this. And the beta male primates don't know that they're not going to reproduce because she's not ovulating at that time. They don't know that, but they're going to enjoy the sexual access. So and this is the link that I make, is that when I see this happen in society right now, we are explaining away, or we're rewarding the idea that men should not be invested in their own paternity. So when I see all of these heroic stories of the stepdad, and he's not the stepdad, he's the dad who stepped up. Well, okay, you can maybe morally and ethically and whatever else, you're stepping up and you're doing the job that asshole alpha male wouldn't do. Right? You could feel good about yourself, but at the end of the day, from an evolutionary standpoint, it doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter how you feel about that. It doesn't matter how good, the positive vibrations you get from the single mommy that you decided to wife up. At the end of the day, his genetic legacy continues, and yours is either doesn't continue or it's at a lesser advantage because you're also investing in his kid. So from an evolutionary perspective, it doesn't matter how good you feel about yourself. It's what's the end result. Right? But people say, well, I got a single mother and yeah, I'm taking care of her her baby daddy's baby, but I got a kid out of it too. Great. But would it not be, from an evolutionary perspective, would it not be better for you to have found a woman who was childless and had 2 kids with her, right? Both of them that are yours. From an evolutionary perspective, that's the advantage. And so we make up shit. We make up moral reasons. We make up feel good vibration reasons why the guy is a stepdad. But in the end of the day, that guy, the guy who wifed up the single mommy, is still a cuckold. By definition, is still a cuckold. When people say, well, what about when you adopt? Like, well, first of all, why are you adopting? Is it because you don't have any swimmers? Is it because you're impotent? Is it because you can't breed and you want a child and you want that experience in life? Great, go do it. Great. But still you are taking care of another man's progeny. How you make yourself feel about that is another thing. And that's where I go with this, is like on Father's Day and on Mother's Day. And, we want to just, as a social order, we want to say, well, men's investment in children is not as valuable as women's investment in children. When we talk about how, it doesn't matter that what the guy does as long as he's there. And we build this idea that it shouldn't matter, like this instinct that has happened over and over and over, with respect to jealousy, with respect to mate guarding, with respect to everything that a guy feels, right? That's bad. That's wrong. A guy shouldn't feel that way. He shouldn't want to do that. He shouldn't want to ensure his own paternity. And so I think that part of this, that's why when I wrote that essay about promiscuity, promiscuity, paternity, and polyamory, that's why I put all those 3 together, because they're kind of interlinked. They're interlinked from an evolutionary perspective. And I'll read the rest of this right here. I want to get to this one part. I'm sorry. Let me move back here again. Can I do this, please? Let's see. There we go. Where did I put this? Okay. The other thing here is, like, he's saying here, among millennials and Generation Z, consensual non-monogamy often takes a form of polyamory, with people having multiple parallel relationships. Remember, this is the guy who wants to write the book on this, right? Is parallel relationships. So it's not about, at least from his perspective, it's not about just going out and knocking it out with, however many people you find at Burning Man. It's relationships. It's developing something. And if you look at I've also got, another, the CBS documentary here says much of the same thing. But it's this want for normalizing. It says, I'll use polyamory, polyterms. Okay, so openness to polyamory is already common among younger adults. So one of the criticisms that I've had thrown at me, thank you, Jack Murphy, is that poly is never going to be mainstream. It's never going to be a big deal. It's not, only special people who are secure in their masculinity can be, successful polyamorists. And I'm just going to call you out here and say this is nonsense. Okay. And even Jeff says this. Okay. About 4% or 5% of all adults are currently in open or poly relationships. About 20% have tried some kind of open or poly relationship at some point. Among adults 18 through 44, 17% have had sex with someone else with the consent of their partner, up to 9% among adults aged 45 to 54. I don't know where he's got the links in here. If you guys really want to see where his stats are coming from, you can go check out this article. I've linked it in the description. About 28% of adults say it is not natural for human beings to be faithful to only one person. Remember, now we're using terms like faithful. Okay, so I can be faithful to 4 partners. I could say, okay, only you guys are the ones I'm going to have sex with. I think we're kind of confusing terms here. I don't know exactly how this questionnaire is, or how these stats are formed, but understand that it's not just going out and knocking it out with randoms. It's forming relationships with randoms, I guess. About 29% of adults under 30 consider open relationships to be morally acceptable, compared to only 6% of adults over 65. So this is, again, I think what he's trying to do here is make a generational comparison, right? So it's only those old guys, those old fuddy-duddies who are 65 years old who actually think that it's morally acceptable. Hang on. Excuse me. Polyamory is still a smallish subculture, but it is already much more common than being gay or lesbian. Americans think that about 24% of people are gay or lesbian, but the true percentage is closer to 2%. So I don't know where he's getting that. Thus, among America's 83 million millennials, 24 million are sympathetic to poly ideals. 17 million have tried poly, and 4 million are currently poly, compared to 3 million who are gay or lesbian. So that sounds to me that it's more mainstream than gay or lesbian couples, or being gay or lesbian, right? So yes, it is going mainstream. Yes, it is being talked about. We had this sort of come out. I think what you're going to see, and you're already seeing this with the Katy Hill case. They had a quote unquote poly relationship. They had an open marriage, she and her husband. And I'll tell you what's funny about this is her ex-husband, who was the one who was leaking all of these, excuse me, was leaking all of these shots of her naked with her staffers or whatever. I guess maybe one of the girls that they had hired was also one of her lovers or their lovers. Everything was cool when it was her, another girl, and him. But when she decided to go out and she started paying more attention to another guy, that's when he became her ex-husband. That's when the pictures come out. That's when he's not okay with that. So what I was saying before about how men and women's sexual strategies differ is always going to in some way influence or color the idea of what poly should or shouldn't be for their relationship. Men are going to be more jealous because they want to know that their paternity is going to be there. So when I hear guys say, and you're going to hear him, I'm going to read this here to you in a minute, but when I hear guys say, I'm more secure in my masculinity because I'm willing to let my wife or girlfriend go out and have strange on the weekends. I encourage her to do that because I'm a man's man and I don't worry about those things. Well, that right there is a not so much a declaration, but it is a refutation of that paternity instinct. What that says to me is that you're not more secure in your masculinity, but you have in some way conditioned yourself by eroticizing it or getting off on the idea that another dude is nailing your girlfriend or nailing your wife. That's what that it says to me, that all you've done is repress those natural evolved instincts to know paternity, to assure paternity, to have a want to not so much possess a woman, but make sure that she is only breeding with you. And people say, well, that's possessiveness. Well, there's a certain amount of possessiveness that's always going to be a part of a man's sexual strategy. So now what people are going to say is, well, Rolla, didn't you just say a minute ago that men's primary motive, primary biological drive is unlimited access to unlimited sexuality? Yes, I did. The secondary motive, or the underlying reason beneath that, is that there is this need still to know paternity. So it's not just randomly going out there and knocking it out. It's also finding the women to settled in with. And it's almost like this drive for to be an alpha male. Like guys want to sequester a lot of women that are only his women. Now, one of my sayings has always been is that when every man wants a slut, he just wants her to be his slut. So what I mean by that is that there's still that drive for paternity, even underneath the need to go and breed with women. There is a drive for ascertaining paternity, but there's also that same drive to go and breed with as many women as he can and ascertain and assure his own her pregnancy, his paternity with many women. So that's where the instinct comes from. That's where jealousy comes from. That's why we say someone is cucked, right? Like, I understand that it's used as an invective now. I understand that silly adolescent boys say, "You're a cook." Okay, I get it, right? You don't like to be called a cook. All right. I'm not calling you a cook. I'm just saying what you are doing and the direction that you are going and the excuses and the rationales you make for allowing another man to have sex with your wife and potentially impregnate her. Whether or not that's even possible isn't the issue. It's that you have repressed that innate drive. It's that you have repressed the jealousy module, I guess, of your instincts that was embedded in you for a reason. And you say, well, that doesn't make me less of a man if I let other guys go and nail my girlfriend. Tell yourself whatever you want, but from an evolutionary perspective, from a real world nuts and bolts perspective, you are allowing that to happen. And you've done something along the way to condition yourself to think that that is an advantage. And later on here, Jeff's going to talk about this, is that he thinks that eroticizing it and getting off on it is the key to tamping down that jealousy. And we've got to remember that that jealousy was embedded into men, and it's also embedded into women too, because women also do mate guarding as well. When that guy is of higher sexual market value and is acknowledged by other women as being higher in sexual market value. So I'm just going to keep going here a little bit more. Why is polyamory hard? Poly relationships can work very well for some people. If I've been in a successful open relationship for 5 years and we're getting married next month. So what does that even mean? Why get married? What is it about monogamy? There's still this want for monogamy, right? There's still this idea that I'll get married and I'll commit and I'll play by the rules. I'll do what society wants me to do but I'll do it with a caveat of I still get to follow my paternal instincts, or my sexual instincts. So there's still this want for it. There's still this want for a connect. I guess you could say, well, it's a connection. It's an emotional connection. Yeah, but what is the mechanics of that? Why is there an instinct to even desire that? Why not just simply spin plates, right? Why have a wife at all? Why not just be the dude who's just like, what? If you're so secure in your masculinity and you're such a badass, why get married? Why not just, even Dan Blitzerian, right? He says he wants to settle down and live some life of domestic bliss. Why? You've got everything, dude. You have everything you possibly. It's only a disadvantage to you, particularly in this society. But why is that? Why do you still want that when you have everything? Like when you have women, when you have money, when you have all this stuff, like even when you're maximized to that, you still want that because it's evolved, man. It's because it's part of your innate mental firmware to want to ensure that your paternity is going to be with one chick, right? Now, it's not just going to be one girl. Now, Muslims will say, well, I've got, 4 wives and I've ensured my paternity with 4 women. Perfect. Best of both worlds, right? You've still got that. But why bother? Why? But why not simply, like, if you can ensure that, if you can say, well, I'm going to ensure my paternity with these 4 women, why does one matter more than another one? Right? So I think that there is something there's an innate drive in men to want to know paternity. And I've said this before, it's the existential fear that men have is to invest themselves in a child that is not their own. That's why primates resort to infanticide. Actually, most mammals resort to infanticide. When a rival alpha comes in and takes over a troop of chimpanzees or gorillas or whatever, he kills off all of the children. He kills off all of his rivals. It's brutal, right? Oh my gosh, I can't. That's immoral, right? Yeah, of course it is. It's immoral. It's immoral for a guy or for a chimp or a primate to go and kill the offspring of his rival mate or his rival alpha. Maybe he defeated the alpha or killed the alpha or something. Now he's going to kill all his kids. And oddly enough, the females go into estrus right after that. They become more, they ovulate. They go right into becoming fertile for the new guy to come into play. Well, Again, is that right or wrong? I don't know. But I'll tell you what the other thing is, when people call me to the carpet and they say, when I say this, I say abortion is the ultimate expression of hypergamy. People go, oh, you don't know what hypergamy means. You're, all this other crap, right? I'm like, no, that is, nothing says that guy is not the right guy for her, like the unilateral, uncontested power to abort his child in her uterus, or even out of her uterus, right? I mean, that's where we're going to end up. But again, that's not a moral thing. I'm just wanting you guys to make that comparison. It's immoral for the alpha male to come in and kill the kids, but it's okay for female to do exactly the same thing, to kill off the children of a lesser male, to kill off the baby that she's not ready for, to kill, and there's nothing that man, in Western society, there's nothing that man can do. He has no power over, like, it's her body herself, right? She has complete 100% control over the reproductive process. So, well, women will say, well, men are responsible for all the pregnancies. Yeah, but women are responsible for all the births. Okay, whether the baby gets born or not. So we're going to talk about infanticide as part of a male imperative, and I would say that there's probably parallels to humans, right? What is it? I think it's like 100% or 80% more likely for a stepfather to be abusive of his adopted children, or the stepchildren, than to have the actual biological father in the house. And those are stats that are easy to find, and we don't think about those. We don't compare those to things in an evolutionary perspective. So if we're going to look at it in that perspective, we also have to look at poly in the perspective of, well, how does this advantage a guy, and or what is the perceived advantage, and what is the actual advantage, right? For women, it's the same thing. What's a perceived advantage and the actual advantage? So he goes into this, and I wanted to read this part in particular. It says, poly people have to learn to manage their sexual jealousy. Okay, what that sounds to me is conditioning. You have to unlearn your sexual jealousy. Now, we can do that. Like, if I say, if I talk about men's like innate proclivities, or women's evolved mental firmware, those are the things, those proclivities, those are the things that we are born, that's sort of embedded into our firmware. Like, we come out of the womb and we know these things, or we feel these things as the instincts. Like I was saying about jealousy, that's part of mental firmware. And so he's saying we need to unlearn those things. We need to find some way to do that. And this is the part I wanted to get to. He says, poly people have to learn to manage their sexual jealousy by minimizing it, and by eroticizing it. In other words, you need to get off on the fact that you're jealous. You need to get off on the fact that your wife decided to go on Tinder, find a guy, and go knock it out with him. And so here, I'll continue. So sexual jealousy has deep evolutionary roots. I agree. With clear adaptive functions in increasing paternity certainty, protecting pair bonds, and reducing STI, sexually transmitted. Jealousy is instinctive, yes, and hard to manage by design, or by design, but with a purpose, with a function. There's a reason it's hard to manage. Because if humans of the past who didn't have jealousy, who didn't have that instinct, didn't go on to breed into the next generation. They did not. That's why it is so deep-seated in men, because the guys who were jealous were selected for. The guys who weren't jealous, they ended up calling themselves the guy who stepped up. They ended up adopting and being the good beta male who was okay with taking care of another guy's kids. Now, we'll get to morality and ethics, I promise you, by the end of this show. So it says sexual jealousy has deep evolution roots, protecting the pair. Okay, but lots of emotions that we learn to manage have deep evolutionary roots too. Kids learn to manage their anger. Another thing. Anger is very functional. People think it's bad because you get angry. No, anger is a motivation. It just all depends on how you use it. Right? Teens learn to manage their moodiness, and married people learn to manage their irritability. But many adults have never seriously tried to manage their jealousy. Well, why do you suppose that is? There's a function, there's a reason for that. And I would say that, like when we're looking at the case between Katy Hill and her former husband, it wasn't the fact that she was bringing home, like, she was bisexual and she was bringing home girls for him to have, for them to have three-ways with. It was the fact that she fell in love and got into it with another guy. She actually used polyamory to maximize and optimize hypergamy. That's why. And he got pissed and he got jealous. It wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna get off on watching you're gonna get off watching your wife getting, shish kebabbed by two guys. Oh, that's hot. That's great. That's one thing. It's another thing when she says, you're out and he's in. You're gone. And that's why they were getting divorced. She even had the what was it? The texts, like saying, I wanted to watch out for, I was paying the bills for you. I wanted this to be a clean break. I wanted you to, wanted you to understand, it's not you, it's me, and all this BS that goes along with it. What's the function? What was actually going on there is she had decided that he was out. She could do better. She found out that she could do better. Nathan, come back on. I saw you in the waiting room there. I'm about to get to calls here in just a second. If you guys want to talk to Josh right now, go ahead. We're coming up on. I'll go a little bit over just so I can take some of your comments and questions if you have any here. This is a really deep subject. I knew I was going to go for a while on this one, so I wanted to throw this out there. It's like, again, like, here's the other thing is I saw another thing here, and this is from the Daily Signal. Top psychologist group, the APA, again, is advocating a non-judgmental posture to non-monogamy. So once again, we have the APA coming into the news. Back in January, it was traditional masculinity is a psychological disorder. It's a personality disorder. If men who subscribe to anything that would be conventionally masculine, traditionally masculine, that is bad. We found that out back in January. Well, now look, here we are in October, almost November, and we should be less judgmental about non-monogamy. We should learn to this is good old Tony Perkins here too. Oh no, I'm sorry, I shouldn't pick on him. He's the guy who's actually just reporting this. What was it? The APA may call these open relationships ethical, but American people don't. Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know who to believe here, because I'm looking at Jeff Miller's stats here, and he's saying that a lot of American people are all about it. I'm going to read here just a little bit more of what Jeff was getting into. He says, further, poly people need to manage trade-offs in time, energy, money, and mating effort among multiple partners who are also trying to do the same with their own partners. Now, here's what gets me is I get run up the flagpole for suggesting guys date non-exclusively. I'm not saying have multiple, concurrent relationships. I'm saying spin plates, right? And if you're doing it right, the plates spin themselves, because you have multiple women who desire you, who want to, they want your time. Ideally they want your time, and they're competing for your time and your energy and your efforts because you are high value enough for them to do so. That is, again, this is an ideal situation. I'm not saying every guy does that. In poly, we're saying you need to have multiple relationships, and those people also have multiple relationships at the same time. So energies, efforts are scattered. I'm going to tell you here in a minute why this is rising in popularity, but we'll keep going. So for the people, trade-offs, we're doing the same. Naive polyamorists say love is infinite, and the polyamory logo is a heart with an infinity symbol. However, true romance requires costly commitment signals, so every concrete manifestation of love involves limited resources. Love may not be the zero-sum game that monogamists often imagine, but it still involves real costs, real trade-offs, and sometimes real heartbreak. Yes, I agree. Why? What is the latent purpose for that? Why would a guy have? Why not? Why would you have heartbreak? Right? Why are you going? I think what's interesting is when we talk about, like, living in harmony, right? Or like, I think a lot of people think like this is another play on the free love generation or the free love movement. And I think maybe in a sense it is, but I think it's coming and surfacing now for a very, very real reason. But I think we think of the free love as like hippies or trying to live with, we want to live in harmony with nature. We want to be real. We don't want to be part. We want to resist the man. We want to get back to our roots. We want to feel the earth beneath our feet, kind of crap, right? That's the idea, right? But yet we are going, according to Jeff, you're going against the idea of nature, you're being disharmonious by conditioning yourself not to be affected by jealousy, not to, in this term. Okay, I'm not saying sexual jealousy. You're conditioning through however you've done it. I don't know how, but you're saying that it's better, it's healthier to live like this, or that it's a better, it should be a custom relationship. It should be an alternative to monogamy. And I'm not necessarily saying that monogamy is all that great. I mean, particularly with respect to how it's done now when it comes to marriage and everything else. But I think the proof is in the pudding, man. I mean, you can look at monogamy today, and yeah, it leaves a lot to be desired because we've kind of screwed it up since the sexual revolution. But up until that point, that has been a bedrock of the success of Western culture, Western society. So there's something to be said about monogamy. Maybe not the way we do it now, but the way we have done it before seemed to work pretty well. The nuclear family, go read The Boy Crisis, right? Go read what happens to children when they don't have a, conventionally masculine, beneficial, loving father in the house and a conventionally feminine, nurturing mother in the house. Look what happens when it's what is it, 43% of children are born out of wedlock right now. What happens? What kind of person does that produce? So my other problem with poly is it really is kind of echoing the village analogy I used in positive masculinity. It's the idea that it takes a village to raise a child. So now we're leaning more and more over into this collectivism rather than individualism, rather than, like, we want to say that conventional masculinity, APA just said conventional masculinity is a disease, right? It's toxic. If you believe in any form of masculine dominance, like you need to be the man, I mean, suddenly there's something wrong with that. Well, now there's something right with the idea that we can have concurrent multiple relationships, and we're supposed to be, we're supposed to tamp down our jealousy. We're supposed to tamp down our natural instincts in order to facilitate that. What's the payoff? What's better? What's better because of that? Are we going to produce another generation that is better off because of it? And we'll have to wait and see, right? But up until like right now, when we look and we see that 42% of children are born out of wedlock, and we look at the statistics of the kind of generation that single motherhood produces, fathers being removed from the house, whether or not they were invested or not is neither here nor there. Women are the ones that are doing the raising. So what is it? When we look at like incidents of suicide, incidents of criminality, incidents of drug abuse, incidents of even finishing school, whatever, that generation, if you are raised by a single mother, you are at a distinct disadvantage. So are we saying that, okay, you can have a kid and you can be one of my lovers, and this one over here will be one of my lovers, and you have a kid and you'll be one of my lovers, and that's going to produce a better generation? I don't know. Anyways, finally, he says there's a intense social disapproval of polyamory, but yet you just said that 6%, only 6% of adults over 65 find it morally acceptable. I don't think that jives, but okay. And this is where it kind of falls apart here for me, which is heavily stigmatized, more stigmatized in some ways than sex, race, class, religion, political attitude, or sexual orientation. Conservative and religious people are especially hostile to polyamory. Poly also lacks the legal status of being a protected minority. Yeah, because it's everybody. That's why. It's not just one or the other, it's everybody. So multiple protections actually apply because we're talking about the whole. It's not just one orientation or one race, it's everybody. So let's see. Poly also lacks the legal. Okay. So poly can be denied housing, jobs, child custody just for being poly. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'd like to see some incidences of where a guy who says, yeah, I'm in a poly relationship and they lost their jobs because of it. I think you would probably lose your job quicker by, being a Trump supporter than you would if you admitted to being poly. And then who cares, right? I mean, you're not supposed to be talking about crap anyways, right? And that's the whole thing. If you want to say that, well, poly is a sexual orientation and I can't be denied a job because of it. All right, fine, whatever you want to say. But I don't know. And child custody just for being poly. Well, maybe with good reason. Maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe that's why, maybe the child needs to be somewhere where, multiple, because think about it this way. Child custody tends to go to the mother. If the mother says I'm poly, or if maybe the guy says I'm poly and he wants to have custody of his kids, he's never going to get that kid. I agree. You're never going to get that. But let's look at it the other way. If a woman says she's poly, are they going to be more inclined to give it to the father because mom's going to have multiple boyfriends coming through the house? How is that healthy for the child? You're the psychologist, man. You're the one that I had to go through, and I did too. I had to go through child psychology, and you understand how kids are sponges at 5 years old. Maybe that's what the reason. The political status of polyamory is comparable. Okay, this is where I disagree. The political status of polyamory is comparable to that of homosexuality before 1969, or the 1969 Stonewall riots that launched gay rights as a movement. Okay, here's where we cross a line. There's this want to compare poly as a customized, because here's the thing, poly is not just one thing, right? It's a customizable relationship. It's an alternative relationship. Nobody does poly exactly the same way. So how can we say that? And it's also, as far as I know, is a choice. It would have to be a choice because you have to unlearn or have to tamp down jealousy or those evolved instincts. So you're clearly making a choice to engage in this style of a relationship. So does that mean you are biologically like that? Or is there a poly gene? is there a gene right now that makes you poly? I don't think so. So to say that it is like some sort of human rights, has some human rights potential, I think is ludicrous. So anyways, and that's not to be like, again, convince me otherwise. I'll be happy to listen. All right, let me see. Anyways, I don't want to get too deep into this. Go ahead and read that for your own information here. I'm just gonna kill that off. There we go. All right. So if you guys have, I'm gonna hit some of these the comments here. We're coming up on the 2-hour mark. I am gonna go over a little bit. If you want to come in on this link, which I will go and put again in. Actually put it in all of my links here. All right, that's the link to talk to Josh if you would like to. If you don't have any comments, you can also just throw them out here. I'll look in the comments here. I also thank you, Sam, for keeping track of my supers here. I'm going to run through some of these supers, and then I'm also finally I want to at least try to explain why I think that this is a thing right now. One man's way, $20. He says, it seems it would be difficult to hold frame in poly with lack of boundaries and chaos. Yes, it would. And I think that that's the biggest hurdle a lot of guys encounter when they think poly is a good idea. There are guys, I think beta males get into poly for a different reason than like alpha guys. I think alpha men want to use poly as sort of a free ride. Like, here's why I'm doing this. We're all good. She's fine with it. I'm fine with it. Let's go. Okay. if you're in that situation, my question to you is, why do you need to be in a semi-monogamous relationship in the first place? Why not simply just spin plates? Why not just be single? Why not? Because you're at a greater advantage that way than to pretend to be monogamous with one woman while you're knocking it out with other women at the same time. You could say, well, I'm going the Dan Blitzerian route. I've got 3 women at home and it's great. Poly is awesome. Well, I don't think that's really what Jeff is getting into here. I think it's not so much you like that would be great, right? I mean, that's really the ideal, is to have 4 women living in your house and they're all hot and they're all ready for you. And maybe if one's not, then you can go with the other one, or maybe you want to have a 3-way with another one, or it's like you're like the alpha stud of that family and you're living like the patriarchs of the Old Testament. Okay. I get it. I understand. That's part of the male imperative. That's part of your, unlimited access to unlimited masculine or unlimited sexuality. People throw this at me all the time. They'll give me an instance, and this is how I think a lot of people like to sell poly right now. Is they'll say, well, look at this guy. He's got 3 wives. He's got 3 girls that live with him in the same house. Isn't that great? And we all get along and we all want to have his babies. That's one aspect. The other aspect is the guy who gets with the wife and wants to have sex outside the marriage, and they get off on swinging parties, or they get off on going out and looking for other people with whom to have sex with. Again, no moral judgment here, but that's a different setup, a different dynamic than the one guy with 3 women who are his, right? That are his concubines, for lack of a better term. I was looking at another one. I mean, I don't know what the stats are, but I would say that it's probably more likely that there are beta male men, because there are more betas than there are alphas. There are more beta male men who see, and this is what I was going to, I'm glad you asked this question because I was going to get to this at the end. Most beta men today see poly as a form of a mating strategy. They see it as the only way to solve the reproductive problem. Well, I can't claim ownership. I'm not even supposed to claim ownership. I'm not even supposed to be dominant. I'm supposed to be even Steven and live in an egalitarian lifestyle with women. I can't think I'm better. I can't think I'm dominant. I can't think I'm insert the blank for conventional masculinity. We're already trying to demonize it right now. So you've got a generation of the 80%ers, the beta males that women say are unattractive, but they might be with them if they provide women with the side of hypergamy, which is the providership side, the comfort side, the emotional investment side. Think about it in terms of being the beta orbiter, but it's what we call in the red pill, we call the emotional tampon. Well, take that to the next degree. Like, you're the emotional tampon, and she still goes out and has sex with her alpha boyfriend on the weeks that she is ovulating, and then she comes back to you and cries on your shoulder and hugs you, and you're the stuffed animal. Now imagine you're that guy, but there's another guy just like you who's doing the same thing with her, and he wants to be in a relationship with her as well. And because we now have normalized poly as a societal thing, or it's a thing now, right? She says, okay, I'll be in a relationship with you 2 guys, but I'm still going to fuck Chad on the weekends. And these guys are like, I don't have anything else going. I don't have anything better going. They have no self-respect. They have already tamped down any concept of having an investment in their own paternity. So poly seems like a pretty good idea. It seems like a solution to solving their reproductive problem, because otherwise they got no other options. MGTOWs go off and avoid women entirely. At least they've got some self-respect, at least they've got the gumption to say, no, thank you, I'm done. But then you've got the guys who are in the beta, emotional tampons, the orbiters, who become a little bit more than orbiters. And now they finally got what they wanted, right? I mean, they waited all this time to get with the girl, and now they're in a relationship, but it's still kind of like just the same thing, but we're going to be paying rent together, right? We're going to be watching her kids for her. We're going to pretend we're all cool with it. And, yo, bro, we're in a poly relationship. My joke was this, is that it's poly tends to be one woman who's kind of like a fat four, who is with two guys who are, beta male orbiters and living in the same house, and on the weekdays, and on the weekends she goes out and knocks it out with the guys that she thinks she can get, a hot six, for her. And guys are okay with that, because we're getting to a point right now, and I wrote about this in 3 of my essays. We're getting to a point now where women don't need those guys. They don't need the betas anymore. They don't need the guy who's the provider. They don't really need those guys around. They're nice to have around. They get upset when they're not around, but that's kind of like an instinctual thing. It's this want for attention. It's this need to have a living stuffed animal to hug and to be comfortable with and to be familiar with. So there's still that want, but they don't need them. They don't need those guys to provide for them. They don't need those guys because we've pretty much erased any real need for women to focus on the beta provisioning side of hypergamy. So they only focus on the alpha guys. They only focus on the hot dudes. And I was debating this on Twitter just this morning. Women would rather share a hot alpha than be saddled with a faithful beta, and particularly just one beta, right? So what I think is going to happen in the future, I wrote about this, is I see in the future poly becoming a big deal. That this is the beginning of it. Poly will be a norm very soon. I would say within the next 5 to 8 years, poly will be like, people would, we won't be talking about it. This whole video right here won't seem novel in 5 or 8 years, somewhere around there. Because it'll be the new normal. It'll be something that we just do. And the reason that it's just like this shift, we're shifting away from monogamy right now as a norm, or we're trying to anyways, because we've empowered women, because we said, women, here, we're going to empower you to the point where you control, first of all, you control the reproductive process of humanity for the rest of creation, as far as we know. You can abort on demand. You can divorce on demand. You can. We've already moved, as Dalrock says, we've already moved away from a marriage-based model for raising children to a child support-based model of raising children, and that is by design. That is the village right there. If you want to talk about socialism, collectivism, all that kind of crap, that's where that comes from. We think that we should all collectively be raising kids as a collective rather than by individual families right now. And we do it anyways. We just need to formalize it. Whether it's the schools, your preschools, your religions, your what is it? Your workplaces. Why? We want to say that, Hillary Clinton, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, we do that in pop culture. We look at all the influences that are bombarding, and more so now than any other time in history. Look at all the influences that are bombarding your kids right now. This will be one of those, that it's normal for mommy to have multiple boyfriends, or daddy to have multiple girlfriends, or they're going to one of those parties again tonight when we are staying with grandma at grandma's house. And I don't know. We'll see where that goes, but I think that right now we're seeing a paradigm shift away from monogamy towards maybe poly, or towards something, but that something is going to be based on feminine primacy. What serves the feminine best? People say, well, men want to get laid with a lot. They want variety. They want all that stuff. Yeah, but they also want to ensure paternity. And they're also jealous. You're going to have to, not everybody's going to be able to be this good, a polyamorist in good standing, right? How do you learn that? Do you have to go to classes to learn to tamp down to eroticize your jealousy instinct? I don't know. Well, let me look at these other ones here real quick. Oh, so what I was going to say is that, like, I think that from a moral perspective, people are going to say, well, we're getting away from traditional conventional morality as it is anyways, just like we're getting away from conventional masculinity. We want to demonize masculinity because conventional masculinity is the only thing standing between this kind of crap and monogamy, or going, I mean that in terms of like leaning over into fulfilling a female mating strategy as the primary motivator of this social order. So, and maybe I'm not making myself clear here. I see us moving towards a polyamory, but it's going to be a polyamory that is on the backs of satisfying hypergamy, meaning that poly will be a big deal because women want to have access to those alphas, but they still also, remember, we're looking at two different things here, where women will also want the quality, the high quality sexual experience with the alpha, but they still want the comfort and the parental investment of the guy who's watching the kids while she's out having sex with the guy who's the hot alpha, or whoever it is that she's met. So it becomes this commune. It's this communal kind of relationship where her girlfriends are watching the kids, or her boyfriends are watching the kids while she's out doing whatever. It doesn't matter who the dad is, because we're already at a point right now where we're saying it doesn't matter who the dad is, or as long as you're an active parent, as long as you're the man in that kid's life, that's all that should matter. So we're saying not only are we tamping down our jealousy instinct, we are also tamping down the desire, the need for paternity as well, as far as men is concerned. And in the process, we're also saying, don't worry, women, the beta buck side of hypergamy is already met. Focus on the alpha fuck side. Go and find the hot guy. And you might have to share him with a few other women, but that's okay, because they're all polyamorous too, right? And we should, if you feel any sense of ownership, that's a bad thing. If you feel any kind of mate guarding towards that guy, that's a bad thing. All this stuff, all of the 100,000 years of instinct that's been embedded into your brain, that's a bad. The things that have led to you being successfully reproductive in the past, that's a bad thing. And I have this one joke, and I'll move on here in just a second, but I have this one kind of joke. It's actually I think I've put this in a couple of essays, where there's a part in Jurassic Park where whoever the doctor is, the guy, he's like dumbfounded that they have in some way cloned a T-Rex. Like, we have a T-Rex, and they're trying to feed the T-Rex this little goat, like it's on a leash or something, so it doesn't get away, and they want to feed the T-Rex. And the doctor says, T-Rex, that this is ridiculous, because T-Rex doesn't want to be fed. T-Rex wants to hunt, because you can't repress 65 million years of gut instinct. And I use that as sort of an analogy, maybe as a bad one, about how we think, because we know better, because we have some sort of either ideology or because we want to find some sort of drive to solve our reproductive problem, we think that we should be repressing those gut instincts, that they in some way are bad, or they don't serve a purpose anymore. But men want to, T-Rex wants to hunt. T-Rex wants to know that his kids are his own. T-Rex wants to, go out and mate with many women, but the women that he does mate, he wants to make sure that those are his kids, and he will protect those kids, and he will provide for those kids, and he provides better than even the beta males that would come in and try to have sexual access to his harem. Why? Because that's how we evolved. That's where our mental firmware is at. So is it a good thing for us to repress our jealousy in this respect? Sometimes jealousy can be a very bad thing, but it served a purpose. I'm still kind of winding my way out of Alpha God right now, by Hector Garcia. I think anybody should. This is a really fantastic book, and it's not just about religion. It's also a lot about evolutionary psychology and why it is that we do the things we do, both sexually, and how we sort of extrapolate those things into a larger, like, religious ethical framework. But a lot of the things that we think of as moral also fall in line with how we evolved, with why we get jealous. One of the things about the bad aspects, or we would like to think are bad, like anger's got to be bad, or depression. Like one thing Hector Garcia talks about in his book is depression might be, think about this, might be a adaptation. It might be an advantage in some cases for a guy to be depressed or a woman to be depressed. And we fight against that all the time. We want to say, well, we should be happy all the time. What is it? I don't know what this, somebody needs to tell me. I don't know what the percentages are of the prescriptions of what is it? SSRIs, antidepressants to women, like, because we want them to be happy. There's a reason for that. There's a reason we get, upset. There's a reason why we get depressed. And Hector Garcia says one of the reasons, this is theoretical, of course, is that when men are victorious, even when your sports team wins, that triggers a spike in testosterone in a guy. It triggers, like, when you defeat a rival, when you are victorious as a guy, when you feel that, even sometimes when you hear your fight song or something like that, right? We get a spike in testosterone. When we are defeated, that coincides with a decrease in testosterone. And when we're defeated, we get depressed, we back off, we submit. And maybe that submission is actually a function of keeping you alive. Because if you kept competing, like you said, screw it, I'm going to, death or glory kind of thing. Well, death or glory often ends in death. And so evolutionarily speaking, it's not glorious. It's not noble. It's not like, you're not going to have any Braveheart speeches about manning down and submitting to a rival. But from an evolutionary perspective, it doesn't matter if, nature doesn't care what you think of it. It just cares that you're alive, and it cares that you reproduce. And if that is an advantage for you to back off from a superior competitor or be killed, the guy who backed off is going to live, and the guy who doesn't back off is going to die. So you're going to be selected out. So those kind of things, like the things that we think of as negative, like jealousy, like as Jeff is saying here, why is that negative in this instance? Why is it a negative thing to be to mate guard, to want to make sure that the baby is yours and you're investing yourself in that baby? I'm going to keep going here. But I think right now, the reason we're seeing this in a societal sense is because poly is becoming a new form of mating strategy. And I think in the past, monogamy has worked best for beta men. And think about why, because The Economist was doing a research on, they have a really great, I have to put it in the doc or in the description here. The Economist did this study on polygamist societies and found that they are the most war-torn, most dysfunctional societies are typified by the idea that you can't reproduce unless you can earn a wife. It's all transactional. You got to have enough resources to have a wife, and then you can have multiple wives. And then, of course, what happens is if one guy has 4 wives, that means 3 other guys don't have a wife. Well, if you change that up and you say, okay, everybody gets 1 wife, and we're all going to solve our reproductive problems. Because if you have one guy who's got 4 wives and 3 other guys don't, those guys get together and they kill the guy that has 4 wives so they can have a wife, so that they can reproduce, because that is how important sex is. Like we were talking about before, that's how important sex is. That's how important reproduction is. It will drive you to anger. It will drive you to jealousy, because if it didn't, you wouldn't have successfully reproduced in the past. Humans wouldn't have done that. So that's why you feel those things. So I'm not saying that those 3 guys should go kill that dude, but that's why monogamy has been a thing. Because it served the greatest interest. It served the greatest reproductive interest for the greatest amount of men who would otherwise come together and kill off other people if they couldn't solve their reproductive problems. So what I see now is, as we're pulling away from that, we're moving towards a more polyamorous sexual order, for lack of a better term. instigated by women, instigated by powerful women, by empowering women. We abandon monogamy and we embrace open hypergamy, and in that we embrace open cuckoldry. And because of that, we have to find a way to normalize it. So we have to tell men that their paternity interests are bad. We have to tell men that their jealousy and their mate guarding is bad. And T-Rex wants to hunt. Those guys want to go. They can't help the way they feel. That's the way they evolve. That's who they are. That's what they are. But we're going to say that's all wrong in the interest of like we're going to evolve above that, and we're all above we're all above our evolutionary and our base instincts, and we can say that either ethically or intellectually we're above all of that, and I don't think we are. I think that it is less healthy to live as if we are than it is to embrace that and go with it and live in harmony with our natural selves, our natural way of life. Let's see, one man's way. It seems it would be difficult to hold frame. Yeah, I just said that. Hacker Boy says, thanks for the $5, brother. He says, can you say there will be polygamy for alphas and polyandry for betas if this thing catches on? Well, I think I just said that. Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's necessarily polyandry for betas, because that would mean like I think I kind of mistermed one of my essays, because I said that I called it the new polyandry, and really it's really the new polyamory, because what I see happening is it'll be a polyandry, but it'll be women who are instigating, like let's rewind a little bit back in the past, in our ancestral past, let's just say the Old Testament days, when you have Father Abraham and he's got his concubines and he's got 2 wives or whatever, and that's no big deal because he's a powerful alpha man, and that's just how it works. And you don't touch his bitches, and you respect him, he respects you, and that's how it works. That worked out for the best for the women because he's a high value alpha man. And they might not, because there are fewer of his kind of man, than there are of the 80% or betas that there are out there. So when we look at the genetic record and we see 1 man reproduce for every 17 women, that's why, because it's in their genetic interests to get with the highest quality guy. That's what hypergamy is all about, is to get with the best dude. Is he the best that I can do? Well, if 80% aren't, and this one guy is, and the barrier to entry to getting with them is to share him with these other 3 girls, so be it. I love you, Dan Butzarian, and they'll go off and then live happily ever after. Unfortunately, that doesn't work very well for the rest of the 80% of betas who still want to solve their reproductive problems, and sometimes violently. Well, now let's move forward. So after the sexual revolution, you have women who don't need those betas anymore, who simply say, we're in charge now. We're in charge of reproduction. We are the alpha females, quote unquote. We're going to tell you guys what to do. We're going to tell you when to man down. We're going to tell you when to man up. We're going to put you in jail, beta males, for even approaching us and not knowing that you are beta males and that you shouldn't be approaching us. And if you do, we're going to Me Too you, and you're going to go away one way or the other. But we want alpha guys who we know are well above our sexual market value. We want them to be involved with us and be our patriarchs, right? They be the guys who are going to take care, be our Father Abrahams. Well, that's where we're heading with this, is this idea that we're seeing it already. That's why MGTOW is a thing. That's why incels are a thing. And I know they're not the same. That's why guys are depressed. That's why guys are killing themselves. That's why, they can't solve that problem. And that's why pornography is sedation, because it sedates them from rising up, from going and killing the guys who are pulling an Elliot Rodgers, right? That's what it does. It sedates them and keeps them in line. I don't think that that's tenable. I think that we're going to end up having some kind of upheaval as a result of that. But that's the idea behind a female prompted, female initiated form of polygamy. Like it's polygamy that women want. It's not like men want polygamy, sure. because that aligns with their powerful men get their harems, right? Well, women are in control and they go, you know what? That's a pretty good idea. I'm satisfied. I don't need, I'm a strong, independent woman. I'm independent of men. So I don't need their provisioning. I don't need their input. I don't need men. Men are obsolete, except for the guys who are hot, except for those guys who I want to have sex with. And that want to have sex, of course, is a breeding imperative. That's the reproductive problem that women are solving. So now women say, well, I want to be in a polygamous relationship. It sounds pretty good. Poly sounds fantastic when women are the primaries, when we live in a gynocentric society, when they're the ones that are making the rules. How do I optimize? If I'm a woman and I get to make the rules, how do I optimize my mating strategy? That seems like a pretty good way to do it. So yeah, I think we're headed, that's a long way of answering your question, sorry. I think we're headed towards a female initiated polygamy, or poly, if you want to call it polyamory, whatever. But it will serve, that poly will ultimately serve a female imperative. Because the guys who think that they can be polyamorous, they're still going to get selected out. They're going to get selected out by like Me Too. They're going to get selected out by, the fear of sexual harassment, the fear of approaching, the fear of doing anything. And the men at the top are all about it because poly allows them to explore unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. So there you go. I am really going over here. If you guys want to come on, just go hit. Oh, I'll put the thing up again if you guys want to. If not, I'll be happy to read the rest of these. I'm going to go for another 15 minutes. So if you want to join in, please feel free. Chris in Philly, thanks for that $20. Hacker Boy, $5 says, can you say there will be polygamy for alphas? Okay, that was the one. Duncan McLeod, $5 says, how do I find women into poly? I want to share my girlfriend and find others willing to share theirs, like a porno. Well, gee, that sounds good, doesn't it? I'm pretty sure there are guys that will be happy to answer your question. I know that there are groups. I know maybe you want to go and call up Jeff and Diana. They probably will set you in the right direction. Again, be careful what you wish for. I think a lot of guys think that having a three-way is like the ultimate, like, oh, I want to live a life like a porn movie. And there's a lot that goes along with that. It's not just the sex act. And I know I'm probably going to sound really kind of moralistic here, but for the first time, but there's a lot more to just knocking it out with a girl. There's feelings involved. There's other things that get wrapped up into it. There's things like jealousy, like we were talking about before. And I'm not saying just from an ethical perspective, I'm saying from like an evolved instinctual perspective. There's more to it than just the sex act. If all you want to do is live like you're in a porno, jerk off to porn, right? I mean, that's the most efficient way to do it without any feelings, without any investments in it. Sam, if there's any more that I've missed, please let me know. I'm looking at the ones that you've saved for me here, my good friend. Morgan Madsen, $10 says, can you help me understand purpose versus meaning? If there is no meaning, purpose is something arbitrarily defined by oneself. I would argue exactly the opposite. You could quit TRP work, become an interpretive dancer, same satisfaction. I don't think so. I'll tell you why. Because purpose is objective. I can tell you what my purpose is. I can tell you the direction that I want to go. I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of guys today, is finding purpose. That's why we have the Lost Boys generation. That's why a guy like Jordan Peterson and Tony Robbins and RSD and a lot of these other guys find a receptive audience, because guys don't know what to do with themselves, because they have no purpose. They are like, life-wise, they are effectively rudderless. And so they're the Lost Boys generation. So they seek out guys. Ryan calls this, they are sheep in search of a shepherd, because they have no purpose. They don't know what to do. That's why when like Jordan Peterson says, clean up your room and stand up straight and make your bed and wash your penis, that sounds revolutionary to these guys, because nobody's ever said that to them. Why? Because they had either weak fathers, or they had no fathers, or they had beta fathers who, wanted to play even Steven, and they wanted to make sure, or they, maybe they were raised by single mothers, who knows, they adopted this idea of egalitarian equalism. And as a result of that, they've never given themselves permission to be ambitious, to be their own mental point of origin. I don't think it's a coincidence that guys who are purposeless also tend to lack mental point of origin. Like, they don't make themselves their first thought in their heads. They wonder what other people are either thinking of them, or what a decision what the consequences of that decision will have on other people, not themselves. And so that's the purpose side of things. I think meaning is just something honestly, right now, I think meaning is kind of like a container word. It's like we can put whatever it is that we want to in it. Like what's meaningful, right? Well, meaningful to me, it would be great for me to be able to go and paint my studio right now, but I can't do that because my purpose is getting in the way. I think meaning is just something that's kind of like this esoteric term that we give to our purpose once we found our purpose. I don't think you can find purpose without, or find meaning, whatever that is. I mean, realistically, I don't think you can find meaning without purpose. In fact, I think meaning is just kind of like a nonsense word at this point. People say, well, I would hate to have meaningless sex. It's like, well, what is that? What is meaningless sex? It's just having the sex and walking away. Nobody does that, man. No one has meaningless sex. I've never had meaningless sex. I'm meant to bang every girl I ever bang. No, it's purpose. Purpose, I think, is what guys need to focus on. If there is such a thing as meaning, I think that comes after purpose. Mission Rod, I see you on there. I'll bring you on in just 1 second. Dicey Devil says, thank you, Rolo. Hope the case study I have sent Josh going to bring value to this video. Okay, thanks, man. Chris B in Philly says, why are hot, untouchable girls so intoxicating? I'll tell you in a minute. Because when you see a hot woman, it triggers a part in your brain that is associated with tool use. Because a hot woman solves the problem. A very attractive woman, particularly if she's, here's a really good one, and maybe it sort of goes with our topic today. Why is it that like guys get off on lesbians? Like, I mean, they're porno lesbians. They're not real lesbians, but they're like lipstick lesbians. Why is it that guys get off when hot girls, like, hot feminine girls, like, make out? Why is it that's hot, but like when two guys are making out, women don't get hot on that? I mean, not necessarily. I don't, see a guy like, it's not the same effect. And I'll tell you why, is because, again, men have the biological imperative of unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. And when women are together and when women are hot, that is a signal that they can in some way solve that reproductive problem. So why are they intoxicating? Because you evolved to see them that way. Why is it when you see a centerfold or a hot woman, you get an erection, right? You watch pornography, see a good looking girl, you don't want to. I don't want to look at the swimsuit edition of Sports Illustrated. I certainly don't now. But why? Why do we have to avert our eyes? Why do we want to cover women up? That's the reason, I think, for sexual modesty is twofold. The first one is like when we put a woman, we expect a woman to dress modestly, or we expect her to putting her in a burqa is, one of the extreme ways. But why? Well, it's mate guarding. And why is it that when a woman wears sexually suggestive, like hoop earrings, or she's wearing the hot red dress? Because we know our hindbrains understand that when a woman is in estrus, is in her proceptive phase of her ovulatory cycle, that we know that she's being proceptive for sex. And so when we see a woman who is sending those signals, it triggers in her brain that it's time we got to find a way to solve our reproductive problem. That's why. YOLO. Hi, YOLO. Says, hi, would an ideal society be based on masculine social order, or a compromise between female and masculine? Is Muslim countries an example of positive masculinity? I'm going to answer that in my fourth book, actually. I think that patriarchy has been something that has been a positive influence in Western culture for a very long time, because I think it aligns more directly with our evolved instincts. If you read YOLO, I don't know how well read you are. I would suggest you go read Alpha God by Hector Garcia. I'm really liking this book. I'm advising anybody who hasn't already read it, please buy my book or read my books, but pick up Hector's too. It's pretty good. I would say that from an evolved perspective, if we're going to say what is ideal, I think is where the first place you have to discard. You have to define what would be ideal, like cooperation, advancement, protection, prosperity. Well, I don't know how you define ideal, but I would say if ideal is whatever advances like human interests, I would say patriarchy has been like real patriarchy, has not the fake kind that the boogeyman that feminism wants it to be. I think it has been a benefit to society. And I think that getting away from conventional masculinity is a mistake and always will be a mistake. Again, living in are we going to live in harmony or with our natural selves and use it, understand it and understand the worst of it and understand the best of it and try to maximize that? Or are we going to try to say, oh, we're above that and we can control that and we're these, luminous, metaphysical beings who are just trapped in this crude matter, right? Now, let's see. Heart donor, thanks for the $1.99, man. Say I have two plates spinning. Say I have two plates spinning. How do I communicate I am sleeping with both without one pulling away? Be prepared for that. Be okay with that. Be okay with one pulling away. It's okay to drop plates. Don't get trapped into the idea that you have, like, it's not a game. It's not, you're not winning anything by having, I got 5 plates. Oh, I got 6 plates. No, I got 8 plates, man. I win. Yeah. No, that's guys are competitive. That's why we have dominance hierarchies, right? We're competitive. And so we'll make a game out of freaking anything, but you have to sort of remove yourself from that idea that if you do something like that, you say, hey, look, I like you a lot. I like where this is going. I enjoy your company, but I'm non-exclusive, or I don't want to tie myself down to anything right at this moment. But I do enjoy seeing you, and I want to keep seeing you. I mean, there's ways to do that. There's tactful ways to do that, but you need to do that with the foreknowledge that if one pulls away, all right, cool, whatever. That's why spinning plates, I think, is actually better than polyamory, because you're not investing into those plates to the degree that it would be if you're starting like these little mini relationships with women and have expectations of eventually having expectations of exclusivity. So I think it works better in a man's interests if you are dating non-exclusively. Because you have backup plans. It's like that. It's Royce's old idiom, which is always keep 2 in the kitty, right? Okay, I'm going to keep going here. One man's way. I'm almost done, guys. Just give me 1 second here. $50. Thank you, man. From the woman's point of view, is their mindset of spinning plates as the sexual strategy of desire and poly as transactional? I think of both. I think a little of both, man. Because I think it serves 2 interests. I think it serves one side, like the emotional investment side of hypergamy is served by poly because she has multiple stuffed animals. She's got multiple guys who are there to be her emotional tampons, the guys who are going to tell her it's all right and be the guy who's going to be the comfort provider. And then she can also get it with the hot guys and the foam cannon party, right? She can still do that. So I think it's actually kind of both. I think that if there's a transactional side to poly, it's the guys who are willing to make it transactional. It's transactional for the betas for sure. It might be about genuine desire for the guys who are alpha. So hopefully that answers your question. I think it's a little of both, because remember, women's sexual strategy is dualistic in nature. There's two sides of it. So I think, and guys provide optimization for either side of that. So when the doors are open and the sky's a limit, what's a woman going to do? Well, she's going to see one guy as breeding stock and one guy as the draft animal. So Han Solo, is MGTOW alpha or no? I think it depends on who is the MGTOW. That's kind of subjective. That's probably not the answer you're looking for, but I think it's subjective. Also, I think that from a general sense, I think that it is non-competitive, and it is and MGTOWs aren't going to like this, because I think that it is also part of this submissive nature, the submissive survivalist nature that is part of our evolved firmware. Like what I was talking about before with respect to depression being a survival adaptation. I think that MGTOW is, here's the thing, MGTOW is a solution. Okay, I just kind of come to this on my own. I was watching Donovan talk to a infamous life coach who seems to think he's MGTOW, and I came to this conclusion, is that MGTOW, and because people always say MGTOW is a red pill, and I'm like, yeah, but MGTOW is a practice. MGTOW is what you do with the red pill. PUA is a practice. It's what you do with the red pill. Even tradcons can even say this. I think that there are probably aspects of the red pill, of the praxology that is the red pill, that tradcons will agree with. Like, you got a guy like even Hunter Drew talks about how you can go about making your wife your own personal slut. Okay, well, how do you do that? Well, you use the red pill principles to enact this. They're just taking that information, that tool set, and using it. That's the same thing what MGTOWs are doing. They're saying, you know what, the juice is not worth the squeeze. They understand red pill. They totally get it, but their practice is MGTOW. And I think that needs to be the distinction that's between those two. Now, what is the practice? What does that say about what does the practice say about the person? I'll let you come to the conclusion on that. We have DNA tests now. This is Captain Crunch. We have DNA tests now. Technology has finally answered the paternity question. Yeah, that's part of it. We've mapped the human genome. We can say within 99.999% whether the kid is yours or not. Now we can actually pretty much verify that. But we evolved over the course of 100,000 years without knowing that. Not until when do we do that? When do we have? I think reliable DNA tests came out around the late 70s or early 80s, according to my watch. So yeah, we do. So I don't think people really realize the potential for social upheaval that sciences like that have. Just like hormonal birth control. Nobody thought when we can all finally fuck. We can all fuck and we don't have to worry about pregnancy anymore. That's all people were thinking about, because we were thinking in terms of how good it feels, or human reproduction, right? That's the motive. We don't have to worry about that anymore. We can just go have sex. Social upheaval came as a result of that. And you'll also see that in certain countries, and even in certain states here in the United States, that a DNA test is irrelevant. Because if you are the name on the birth certificate, you're the guy who is paying the bill. So why is that? Because in a feminine primary society, we understand the need for keeping women as the primary. Mission Rod, I'm going to pull you up here real quick. Hang on. I'm going to get to the rest of these, but Team USA was in first, so give me 1 second. All right, man. What's up? Team USA, go.
Hey, how you doing, Roll? I was on before last.
Good. I half an hour.
Good. My observation there is that I'm in a big city here that recently had experience with someone being outed, but it was
That's fine. Don't worry about it. It's all good.
So your observations on what these relationships are like is absolutely spot on. I know some people that are involved in them, and I know some women that wanted to get their husbands into it, and they didn't want to do it. They ended up getting divorced, and it's exactly what it is. They want the plow horse, but they also want to have the side, and it would have benefited them more than anything, and they knew it, and that's why. But the rationalization they use is, oh, I did it because I was so bored in my marriage. I thought this would bring us closer together, and it would be something that would add to the intimacy of our marriage. And it, you know, you can just look at them and go, okay, you know, you just smile, and it's
I think, and thanks for the input. I think that, hang on, I'm going to kick you. Hang on. I think you're 100% right. One of the things I see in normalizing this is playing on this beta male need to reinforce your security in your masculinity. That's one thing I constantly get from guys who are very pro poly. Again, I'm not anti-poly and I'm not pro-poly. I'm just trying to figure this whole shit out. But I will say that it's been my experience that guys will say, well, I'm strong enough in my masculinity to get off on or eroticize this jealousy that would otherwise prevent me from being a more, you know, I don't know, advanced, actual, self-actualized human being. So I've tamped down the negative side of me, and I think it's fine for a woman to go and, you know, I'll go find some guys to go and nail my wife. Right. And they think that is they're submitting to their own cuckoldry is in some way empowering to them as a man, as this new masculinity. Like all guys should be like this. Are you secure enough in your masculinity to let your wife go get, you know, railed by another dude? It goes back to the transvaluation idea that, you know, vulnerability is strength, you know, strength is weakness is strength is weakness, that kind of stuff. Masculinity is whatever we say it is. And there's a reason why this feminine imperative culture is trying to either confuse, obfuscate, or redefine what masculinity ought to be for guys. And this is a part of it. This is a result of that. We're gonna participate in a much more pro female mating strategy as part of our social order. And the only way we can do that is if we can get guys to tamp down their natural instincts, like paternity, like jealousy. So, Mission Rot, you're next. Go, man.
Hey, Rollo.
Hey.
Thanks for all your books, what you have done to me. It's really great. You saved my life. And
Thanks.
basically inspired me to start my own small Red Pill YouTube channel here in German-speaking area.
Cool.
So one of my subscribers asked me, and it's an interesting question. It sounds simple, but his question is basically, how can you, as a red pill aware man, love a wife or love a girl and go into a relationship? Because he has the problem. He is now red pill aware, and whenever the topic relationship comes up, he is very cautious. He sees all these signs, and he thinks he's so predictable himself. He can't let go of it.
Okay. Thanks for the input here. So here's my I get this a lot. A lot of guys will tell me, I'm pull you out. Guys will tell me that they think that I'm saying that men can't love women or women can't love men, right? That because that whatever they define as love is not in the wheelhouse or is not in the capacity of women to return or to reciprocate, let's say, that therefore the way that they think of love is the only real way of love, and women can't feel that way, so therefore they can't love. And that is not what I've said. I've actually said quite the opposite. I think that love is something that is quite attainable, and it has been for some time. From a evolutionary perspective, why do people fall in love? Well, because they want to form bonds, form families. We're innately tribal animals. We're innately social animals, and we're innately tribal animals. And the smallest unit of the tribe is the family. And so there is we'll talk about jealousy and understanding, you know, parental investment and all that good stuff. There has to be a way to keep men and women together, to keep them cooperating, to keep the fire burning, right? To keep your kids together, and because they have a better chance of survival if we all, you know, as a family, focus on our genetic legacy together and do the best that we can. So that's the purpose behind love. Now, how men and women come to it is different. Men think that love should exist for the sake of love, that it's an idealistic nature. They want to know what could, men are idealists. Okay. We want to know what can be. We are more concerned with things. Women are more concerned with people. Women are opportunists, not in a bad way. They are opportunists in that they need to get the best that they can to ensure the survival of the best offspring that they can produce and send into the next generation. So when women approach love, they approach it from an opportunistic perspective. That's why we get things like, "Oh, you're not economically attractive," right? That's a thing. We would say, "Well, shouldn't it be for love?" Like, remember that? Remember when guys get all upset and they say, "Well, well, I guess love doesn't matter anymore, right? Love's not a big deal." Right? Well, that's your idealistic nature thinking that love should exist for the sake of love. In fact, they even added that into some of those articles, saying, "Well, love actually does matter, but economy matters too." Right. And so they throw that out there and they say, well, these guys they're not enough economically desirable men for women to fall in love with and start families with. So guys say, well, love should matter for the sake of love. Women say, well, you need to check off these checklists before I will allow myself to become emotionally invested in you. That's hypergamy right there. So how can two people come? How can a guy and a girl come? Well, first of all, the guy has to, at least in some way, hit on enough of what a woman has as her checklist or her hypergamous filter for her to allow herself to become emotionally invested in that guy. That's when you have a love on her part. So the opportunism is taken care of. And then from the man's side, she has to be someone that he is idealistically into, that he wants to believe that he can do something with, right? That he wants to imagine what it would be like, idealistically realize what it would be like in the future with this woman if they were to get together, have kids, have family, that kind of stuff. So yes, women also have to understand the idealistic nature of the man, and men also have to understand the opportunistic nature of the women. When you have a man and a woman who can accept not only their own concepts of love, but also the concepts of love of the other person, that's when you have good, symbiotic, long-lasting marriages, long-lasting relationships. That's when a woman invests herself in there. That's when women will tear their hair out and mourn for days and even commit suicide if their alpha male ends up dying or ends up becoming removed. Like, people will ask me, well, what about the alpha widow versus the alpha, was it widow versus the war brides, widows and war brides? If the guy was beta, if the guy was not the best she could do, or in some way she had some doubt about that, that's when that woman doesn't have those problems. She doesn't have the problems that she would have of pining after that guy or worrying about him. She can move on. If the guy is more alpha, she's going to pine for that guy. She's going to, he will become her alpha that she is widowed from. So there's some. I'll post some links in the description, and you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. But when it comes to a mutual love, it has to be based on an understanding. Like, men have to understand women look at love opportunistically, and women have to accept that men love idealistically. And when they do that, when you have that together, that's when it gets pretty good. I like to think that I have that with my wife right now. It took me a long time to do that too. Like, I was very idealistic when it came to love. I was the same way. Well, shouldn't it matter? I'm in love with you. So what's on the inside that counts? All this fucking, blue pill poetry that you're taught all your life. Once I realized that I have a burden of performance and she's not going to fall in love with me, she's not going to allow herself to become emotionally invested in me unless I am the man, unless I am the dominant guy, unless it's my frame that she comes into. She's not going to love me if I don't control frame, if I don't have the frame, if I don't have a world for her to come into, because in doing so, I check off those lists, and that frees her up because that concern is gone, that I'm the best that she can do. Now she can fall in love with me. Now she can actually open herself up. She can be more. This is when all that emotional gooey stuff comes out that, like, all, a lot of the God pillars right now, or the tradcons, want to say is the most important part. That doesn't come until you get past the opportunism. It doesn't happen until you are the best you can be, until you are you have in some way lived up to your burden of performance. So And I think a lot of MGTOWs don't like that. I don't want to have to do anything. Women can't love me. Well, they can't, because you're unwilling to accept the fact that that their kind of love, or their concept of love, is just as significant and just as real as yours. You want to believe that your concept of love should be the mutually held concept of love, when it's not. And that, because of that, that is what creates the most conflict in marriages and in long-term relationships. So when a woman says, I'm in love with you, but I'm not, I love you, but I'm not in love with you, that's because she still has that investment in you, but you're not meeting the opportunistic side of her opportunistic concepts. So she wants to, you're a great guy. You're fun to be with. I love you. You're a great stuffed animal at the end of my bed, but I'm not in love with you. It means you satisfied that provisioning side, but you're not the hot, fun, spontaneous alpha dude who steps up and pulls her hair and does her from behind, right? You're not that guy. So that's why you get that, because there's a part of that hypergamy that has to be met before, like the checklist, the filter has to be passed before she will allow herself to have that emotional investment in you. And that's when shit happens. That's when you get the ride or die girl, is when you get past that, when you are without a doubt the best that she can do. That's when she's like, oh, I love you, I can't get over him. That's when she cries a river for the guy, the one that got away. Anyways, hopefully that helps. Ben, I'm going to get to you in just a second. I got one more thing here. Philip says, for every 1,000 live births, there's an average of 350 abortions, according to Google. There's your stats right there, man. Infanticide. We think infanticide is bad if men do it, but when women kill babies, then we're all good with that, because it aligns with a woman's mating strategy, because it is the ultimate expression of hypergamy. Nothing says he wasn't the guy like being able to abort his fetus whenever you feel like it, and nobody can say shit about it. That right there that's power. That is power over men, because men can't do anything. Power, as I've described power as this, is that it's not like being able to force people to do what you got to do what I want, man. I'm powerful. That kind of power. I mean, that's very stereotypical understanding of power, right? Power really is your capacity, your ability to control the direction of your life, to make choices that you get to do. Sometimes that is enforcing your will over others, because your will over them is what you want to do with your life. But ultimately, the real definer of power is having the power to do with your life as you feel, like what you want to do. So something there. Let's see. I got to Yellow's question already. Okay, Ben, you're up. Here we go. Ben, and then I got Unfork Yourself. You guys are the last ones. Josh, no more. I gotta go, man. I'm almost doing 3 hours here. Ben, you're up.
Thank you. First, it's an honor to speak to the inventor of the red pill. And I keep it very short, otherwise I could speak like 10 hours over this topic. My problem is discovering the red pill was a bad effect on my career life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fired now from my last job. The other things was mistakes, but now I have to seek the 6th job in this year, and I think it's all an effect from the red pill, because my angel on or my view on the society is very different. I discovered the red pill like June 2018, and then my whole job life, I'm in corporate jobs, it went down. It went down. And I don't know why, because I cover myself as I don't know, like a submissive guy, even if I have the red pill in my mind. But sometimes maybe I show with body language that I'm red pill aware. But the normies, they can't cope with it. What's your opinion on that? And to keep it very short.
That's fine. I got a couple of questions for you first, though. So first of all, I don't know what you do, and you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. but
I can speak open
okay.
about it.
Is it you just like a corporate job, or are you working in are you in a cubicle farm? Huh?
No, corporate job.
Corporate job. Management, or are you like a coder, or are you like?
No, not IT. Low management. I was in organic supermarket. You have that maybe like Whole Food in America too.
Yeah.
Like a department manager or vice store manager, you know. Then I had an accident and I had to leave this job, got some money out of it because I was 9 years then. And then I had to get back in my old business. This was hospitality industry, like hotel management and bars and things like that. And I worked like a waiter, like a host, you know, the guy who brings
now,
the people to the restaurant.
Are you getting fired from these jobs, or are you
No,
just
no,
like leaving them because you just can't put up with the people anymore?
The one in January was because I was mobbed from a feminist. Then the other one after that was because the company had to hire sales plans and fired 80% of the staff. Like in America, it comes now to Germany because I'm a German guy. The job after that in August was the guy ripped me off. He didn't pay me. There's now the police raid on him. And the very last job was after 1 week, the guy said, I can't do anything. I was just a head bartender and things like that, and I couldn't do.
So I let you go. So in all of these, so with the exception of the feminists you think was instrumental in getting you canned, it sounds like most of these were either just like you just wanted to leave, or it was sort of circumstances. Is it? I'm thinking probably it's because, I mean, you're thinking you're going to look at things differently when it comes to red pill, and particularly when it comes to corporate life. One of the things that, and Ben, I'm gonna put you off here real quick. One of the things about understanding the red pill, understanding the things that either I talk about or whoever, one of the biggest criticisms I think of the red pill is that it's like, oh, it's radicalizing guys, or it's making guys think in different ways, or it's not just about the intersexual dynamics anymore. Now they're thinking about race and about politics and about religion and about, you know, whatever else, because if this isn't true, then what else couldn't be true, right? And I don't really buy that, because I think that the guys that would, maybe guys are looking for a convenient rationale for that, but I think the guys who are going to be radicalized, we're going to be radicalized one way or the other. I mean, there's plenty of people who get radicalized by religion, right? There's plenty of guys who get radicalized by politics, or even, I mean, you could argue that like Antifa is radicalized by, you know, just the social justice, you know, culture. We don't point fingers at that. We point fingers at the red pill because it's easier to do that, because it's got a cute name. It's got the manosphere on it. I think, Ben, that what happens to guys is maybe you start seeing, you start conveniently force fitting in circumstances into like red pill awareness. If it was like, if you had been like doxxed, or if you had been like people, like if an employer had gone and, you know, checked out your Twitter feed, or checked out your blog, or you know, looked for you on Facebook, whatever your social media is, and they saw all this, you know, red pill, you know, whatever writings, you know, or even just like conversations. Yeah, you got to be careful of that. You actually do. I have said this before, that there are certain personalities in the manosphere who will never be able to go back to a regular job. You won't be able to do that, because in the future, that's the first thing an employee, that's what I would do. I mean, I hire guys all the time. I go and do background checks whenever I'm looking for promo guys, or I'm looking for a new designer or something like that. I myself do that. because I want to get an idea of who the person is that I'm looking for. If I can't find them, I'm not going to go say, "Hey, dude, give me your Twitter feed." I'm not going to do that. But if I'm just doing that, you bet your ass that like corporate America and corporate Germany or whatever is doing the same thing. So it's possible that maybe, I don't know if you have a blog or a Twitter feed or whatever else, but it's possible that they see that and then maybe that sort of spills over into your work life, because they can't just go, "Hey man, we saw these posts on Twitter and we're going to let you go," right? They can't say that, but they got to find ways to make it difficult so you will quit. That's a common tactic in corporate America, is to make your life so miserable and your schedule so miserable that you go, "I can't do this anymore," and then you'll quit because they want you out, but it's you who's doing it and not them who's doing it. So it's like you initiated the pull. Now, how does that relate to the red pill stuff? You can put a red pill lens on and see what's happening. I think one of the things that throws guys off when they become red pill aware is that it changes a lot of the relationships with family and friends and work life and school life, and they start to understand why the relationships they have are actually that they have at all, and they understand things, I think, from a more base level. And I think it takes a little, I think you need to prepare yourself not to read too much into things. And certainly never say, "Oh, the red pill said this," or "Rolo says this," or never attempt to like read my book or try to evangelize to like quote unquote normies, right? That's what's called the secret of the red pill. Like, guys have asked me this before. They said, "Should I reveal the red pill? Like, should I just let women know that, be above board and be overt and say, yeah, I understand what you're doing. You're shit testing me now. And Rolo says this." Never do that, because unless you really want to just, sort of abandon that relationship, because especially if it's a woman, women want to play the game. They don't want to be told that they're playing the game. Same thing for beta guys. They would rather be stuck in their ignorance than have to actually think about the kind of stuff that you are aware of. They have to come to it on their own. You can't show them. And I know it's hard. It's hard to resist. It's hard to go, "Man, I really want to talk to this guy," but you can't do that, because it will ruin your relationship with them. And if your revenue, if your well-being depends on you having a good sort of, copacetic relationship with them, you're going to put undue stress on it. So I hate to say, "Oh, you have to be like elitist and you have to be above it all," but you kind of have to be above it all, and you have to wait for your moments. And I don't know, try to try, like guys in the chat here are saying, go and start your own business. And I would say, yes, go and do that. Or maybe this prompts you to actually go and do something where you are the one that is in control, and you have direct control over your success or your failure, right? And you're not wasting your time with what they'll say, making somebody else rich, right? Focus on yourself. Focus on doing something that is going to advance your interests. Start a business, or start working for somebody who aligns with what you see in the red pill. That's the best advice I can do. Like, a lot of guys will say, "Well, you're not going to unsee the red pill, so how can you work with that?" Well, you've got to make make decisions based on the truth that it says. Hey, unfork yourself. If you want to come back, that's fine. I'm about to go here, so we're coming down. Oh, there you are. Okay, last one. Here we go. Unfork yourself. You're on. Go.
Rolo, appreciate you taking my. I just kind of want to let you know what my progress has been since I met you guys at Red Pill. So I quit my job. I have disability from the military. I started my own business, started my own YouTube channel. So eventually I'd like to get you on as an interview. But one of my things that I wanted to talk about was that I think that the reason why we're seeing this increase of incels nowadays is because of this poly type idea with feminism, because now that you have women who can choose the best high quality alpha males, now you have a lot of men who are left out of the system. And so that's causing all this incel stuff, all this Joker mentality, all these people who are killing because they're they're completely, they have no guidance on how to get to where they need to be in the sexual market value.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say, if, like, here's what I think is, and thanks, I'll put you out here. I think that you're correct. I think that we have a greater facility to be aware of guys like this. I was just talking about this with I think it was Troy and Ryan not too long ago, is that there were always losers in high school. Like even back in the 80s when I was in high school, there was always that one guy. There's goths back then. People don't think that, but there were goths back then. There were guys who were like depresso guys, the emo guys, the guys that you just sort of stayed away from because there's just something wasn't right about them. Maybe they were gamers, maybe there's something kind of a little off about them. There's always guys like that, but I think that we're more sensitive or more aware of them now because we have the World Wide Web, because we have a global marketplace of ideas. And so we have forums where these guys can collect. And so we find out what the real frequency of these guys, being around really is. Like, how many of these guys there really are? Well, back when Elliot Rogers did his thing in 2014, he would belong to a forum called PUA Hate. And then it became Slut Hate. No, Slut Hate, and then it became PUA Hate. And people were like, "Oh my God, what's an?" We didn't even know what an incel was, right? We didn't know involuntary celibate. What is that? That's just a guy who can't get laid. And well, we want. And now it's to say somebody is an incel is an insult, right? Or it's like, oh, you guys are talking about women. You're talking about women bad. You must not be able to get them. You're an incel. That kind of mentality. It's everywhere on Twitter. It's everywhere on Reddit. It's everywhere you look. And it's funny to get an easy to pronounce, insult like incel. But you're right. I think that, and I don't want to pick on MGTOWs, but MGTOW is also a response to this. PUA is also a response to this. Incel is also a response to the new global sexual marketplace. And poly is a response to this as well. It's how are we going to go forward? How are we going to make what is the sexual marketplace going to look like? Is it going to be based on monogamy, or is it going to be based on polyamory? Is it going to be healthy men and women who embrace conventional masculinity and conventional femininity coming together to create strong families? Or is it going to be we're just going to throw everything to the wind and hope for the best, like hope that things are going to come up? I think from a progressive perspective, people want to still believe in the blank slate. They still want to believe in social constructionism, and egalitarianism is going to be the savior of humanity. Like the more even we are, the more equal we are, the more we tamp down our natural impulses, the more we get over jealousy, the more we don't matter. It doesn't matter who the dad is. The more we do that, the more even we're going to be, and the better, the more utopian the society. And I think that's just absolutely false, because it's thwarted by our natural proclivities, by our evolved instinct. Now, I'm talking about this as a, white middle class guy in the United States. Okay. When we have these discussions, I think we do so from a perspective of Western culture. There's other cultures out there where what I'm talking about, or what the red pill's talking about, would seem ridiculous. Even my grandfather's, generation would think this is, and they live here in the United States, they would think that this is ridiculous. Like, we're even having this conversation, but we are having this conversation because it will spread. I'm writing right now about how, oh, thanks, One Man's Way. I'm writing now in book 4 about how feminism has been assimilating Christian culture, particularly evangelical Christian culture, and as well as others, because I'm focusing on religion right now. And the first thing people will say is, well, not in my culture. That'll never happen. And in Orthodox this or whatever that, we know how to, we are still locked into how men are men and women are women for now. We're in a global, we're doing globalization, and globalization is not just about the economy. It's not about a one world currency. It's about culture. It's about a one world culture, a one world religion, a one world sexual marketplace, a global sexual marketplace. And we're leaning more and more into that. And we're trying to figure out how this is going to look going forward. We can now have designer babies if we want, right? We can choose the sex of a baby. Chinese have been doing this already. They've already figured it out. We want a blonde haired, blue eyed baby, and we want it to be a girl. We can do that. We can engineer a baby. We can do designer babies. And if we can't do it perfectly, we will be able to very soon. So now what we're looking at is we're looking at the human race being able to rise above evolution and direct where we want to go with it. And to say, okay, this is where we should go. And now it is going to be human ideology that directs the course of human evolution. So if we say ideologically, brown-haired babies with brown eyes is the best. So we want more and more of those. If we think that culturally, we think that ideologically in our global culture, that is now taking a direction evolutionarily wise towards what we ought to be based on ideology. So but yeah, I mean, I get it. I get what you're saying. Like MGTOWs is a reaction. It's a thing. Incel is a reaction. PUA is a reaction. How are we going to? Men have always adapted to women's sexual mating strategies and vice versa. But because women are in the controlling dynamic right now, it is men who are being reactive. And I think that poly seems like a big deal, or it seems like a mating strategy that serves the best interest of beta men, when in fact it doesn't. It serves the best interest of women, because women are the primary right now in a gynocentric society, and those men aren't needed, and they know that they're not needed. That's why you get incels. That's why you get MGTOW. They know that they're not needed. They know that it's dangerous for them to approach. Fear the woman. Don't approach her. Don't do it. Because you could lose everything. Literally, you could lose everything by touching her, by doing something. You'll get me too'd, whatever. You could fear. Don't do anything. So fine, okay, fine. I won't. I'll go over here and do my own thing, and you go do your own thing. Okay. Well, what happens is when you say you go do your own thing, poly is what they do. That's where they go. And guys do think, well, maybe I can get in there. And poly seems like a good way to do it. So that becomes a mating strategy. That becomes the adaptation. Alpha males. Well, I'm getting laid anyways. Why wouldn't I want to go with poly? Because now women want to share me, and I don't even have to explain it. They are the ones that are initiating it. They're the ones that are saying, I know you're going to have other girlfriends, but I really want you to do me really hard tonight. And they're happy to do it. And they're like, fine, great. And if babies result, great, babies result. If a woman can get pregnant whenever she wants to get pregnant, she's going to have the babies she wants to have. Like I said, abortion is the ultimate expression of hypergamy. The babies she keeps are just as important as the babies that she aborts. So if she says, I'm going to have his baby, well, there's a reason why women have men's babies. There's some benefit to be had by having that guy's baby. So is he really hot and he was good in bed and he was fun, a sexy son? Oh, great. I'll have his kid because I know that I'll have a great looking son or a great looking daughter or whatever. Biologically, it sounds good. Oh, this guy makes $1 million. Good. I'll have this guy's kid and I'll tell this guy that it's actually his baby and he'll pay for it. So I'm going to solve my reproductive problem with 2 guys. Well, it's so much better if the society says, yeah, you can do that. Go right ahead. That's normal now. You can go ahead. There's no such thing as infidelity. Infidelity will save your marriage. There's no such thing as jealous rages or anything like that, because those guys have it under control. You can go do whatever you want because the society works for you, not for anybody else. God. So yeah, that's what's the natural fallout? Yeah, you're going to have incels, you're going to have MGTOWs, you're going to have MRAs, you're going to have PUAs, you're going to have. I would say that probably there's going to be something coming up. Now, I'm going to make a prediction here. There's going to be something coming up in the next decade, and it won't be any of the above. It'll be some amalgamation. There won't be trad. Oh, tradcon, MGTOW, incel, PUA. Red pill will always be the red pill, but like I'm talking about like what you do with the red pill. There'll be some new factionalization, I think, and it'll be in response as an adaptation to this new global sexual marketplace. Trust me, I guarantee that will happen. All right, guys. It has been a very long time. I also want to very much thank One Man's Way for that $40. Thank you, brother. He says, thanks for your wisdom, Rollo. You are welcome. Sterling Begtail says, thanks again for all you do. Everything I've learned from the red pill community keeps me very content with life's struggles. Frame is everything. Yes, it is. All right, man. It is now 6:09 here on the West Coast. I will be on Pat Campbell's show on Friday. It will be at 11 a.m. Eastern time. He's in Central time. So 11 a.m. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I got a feeling. Anyways, and I'll also be doing Rule Zero on Saturday morning. That will be again at 11:30 on the East Coast, Eastern time. It will, I think Rich might be hosting. I'm not sure. I know he's back. So watch my space, watch my Twitter to get the updates for that. Also, please go and sign up for the Rule Zero Facebook page if you want to get notifications out for every single show. Please also go and leave me a good review. If my book has done something for you, unfork yourself. If you want to show your appreciation, please go to my Amazon page. You can find it in the description here. And if my work has done anything for you, please hopefully the spirit moves you to give me a 5-star review. Reviews always help. That's the only way that I really advertise the books. Also, pass it on. If anything I've said, if the book has really helped your life out, like you guys were saying last Friday, please pass the book on. Physically hand it to somebody and have these conversations yourself. I'm happy to have these with you every Wednesday at 3 o'clock Pacific, but 6 o'clock Eastern. Gosh, it's almost, I guess it's after 9 on your coast. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. Hopefully this wasn't overly long. I think it was, but whatever. It was good. It was a good talk. So I will see you guys later. And also Sunday, I will be back on the regular Rational Male 101 with Pat. If you haven't seen my show with Ryan from last Saturday, it was really good. We were talking about why sex is so important and why people want to de-emphasize why it's important. So go check that out. That is, if you're a fan of this show. Oh, also subscribe, please, and hit notifications. Do all the things you're supposed to do, right? You guys know this. You know the drill. All right. Thank you, guys. I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.